The once beautiful Rose Castle now lies in ruins and destruction, with family members, servants, and workers of the Ragnar clan being slaughtered indiscriminately everywhere. In the midst of all this madness stands the young lord of the Ragnar clan from Rose Castle, doing his best to hold his ground against the mysterious faction. This is a battle for the throne between houses of the Ragnar clan, but our boy does not know yet which house has sabotaged him. But before we dive deeper, here's a little background on the Ragnar clan. This faction is part of a grand ducal clan that protects the empire at the northernmost edge of the continent. The reason the Ragnar clan has been able to solidify themselves as the Northern Wall for over 1,000 years is a special constitution said to have been inherited from dragon's blood. You see, everyone in the Ragnar bloodline is born with exceptional magical power, stamina, and swordsmanship talent. But one particular young lord wasn't so lucky, and he's the protagonist of our story, known as Theo, the bastard heir of Ragnar. The opponent he is facing is apparently his instructor and his swordsman tutor, who betrayed the Rose Castle, which is part of Ragnar clan, but our hero does not know his opponent's true identity yet. This filthy man just mocks our boy, calling him a talentless fool who's good for nothing, even though he comes from the prestigious Ragnar lineage. When he pulls off his mask, Theo's eyes widen in disbelief as he struggles to believe that his master, Rendon, would be the one to betray him. The man keeps berating Theo, saying he watched him train tirelessly every morning despite his lack of talent. He says it was a pitiful sight because no matter how hard Theo worked, it wouldn't get him anywhere. He laughs heartily, while Theo can only grit his teeth in anger, taking all the cruel insults. Theo finally tries to stand up for himself, and shouts about how this bastard infiltrated Rose Palace just to teach him those useless techniques, only to betray him in the end. But Rendon doesn't appreciate his disciple yapping back, so he swings his sword and cuts off Theo's arm. The poor guy screams as blood gushes out, and he eventually falls to the ground. Rendon feels pretty tired of hearing his disciple blame him, so he grabs Theo by the head and hoists him up, letting him know that everything happening right now is because of him. He forces Theo to look up at the Rose Castle burning, and reminds him that it's all his fault that his family members are dying. All this destruction rests on his shoulders because he's a talentless fool. Right at that moment, another guy drags his mother's lifeless body over to him and drops her on the ground. Rendon tells our hero that the reason she's just a lifeless corpse is also his fault. He emphasizes that it's all on him because he's the only useless trash in a clan of formidable warriors. Devastated to see his mother's lifeless body, Theo makes one last effort to fight back. He grabs his sword and charges at this bastard. But just as he lunges, a sword comes flying through the air and drills right through his guts. He falls almost 3 meters away, and the guy who sent the sword flying is annoyed to see his friend yapping and tells him to just finish the brat off. Rendon apologizes for this, claiming he was just trying to take a walk with his disciple down memory lane. Meanwhile, Theo begins to notice the world around him fading away. Just like in every typical reincarnation story, he thinks about how pathetic his death is and regrets not having any talent. With those final thoughts, his world goes dark. But as you might expect, this isn't the end of his life. A system window announces that he has died, and his death has triggered a special trait in him, and he will be sent back to a regression point with his new trait. Theo finally opens his eyes for the second time, and the first thing he sees is that treacherous Rendon right in front of him. It looks like they're in the middle of sword training. Rendon tries to snap him back to reality for being so absent-minded, but Theo still has no clue what's going on. He wonders if he's having flashbacks of his life, and can't believe that the face he flashed back to is Rendon's annoying mug. It feels like a cruel joke from the universe. Suddenly, a system window pops up in front of him and he stares at it, completely clueless. The system window tells him to punch Rendon in the face as part of his tutorial quest. At this point, Theo is more confused than ever about what the hell is happening. He wonders if this is how flashbacks are supposed to work. He also notices that Rendon can't see this system window either. I guess Theo isn't complaining. He just drops his training stick, balls up his fist, and with all the power he can muster, lands a solid punch right on this bastard's face. When the punch connects, there's no change in Rendon's expression. He has no clue what this moron is trying to do. Meanwhile, our boy smirks to himself, thinking about how everything feels so damn realistic. Rendon finally responds to the punch in anger and throws a solid attack at Theo, sending him crashing backward. Theo is annoyed that he has to endure this pain in his flashback as well. Meanwhile, the bastard master just sighs and explains that he understands why Theo might be frustrated, especially with the awakening ceremony coming up soon and his lack of progress. But he still can't forgive a student who lashes out against their master. The mention of the awakening ceremony shocks Theo because that event happened almost 10 years before his death. Rendon keeps on berating him for his behavior and walks away, saying he'll see him in the next lesson. The other clan members snicker among themselves, thinking about how this imbecile is blaming his master when he's the real talentless moron. While his peers continually shower him with insults, Theo finally starts to understand what's going on. He begins scratching the ground and can feel it clearly beneath his fingers. Then he looks at the injury Rondon inflicted on him, and the realistic sensation hits him hard. It becomes clear that he isn't just flashing back. He's actually come back 10 years in time to when he was only 17 years old. Right on cue, a system window pops up in front of him, congratulating him for successfully completing the tutorial quest. As a reward, Ragnar's talent has been activated. The system asks if he wants to receive the reward, and without hesitation, he presses yes. Arcane energy shimmers in the middle of his chest as the system confirms that he has received his reward and that all his stats will now increase at an incredible speed. Back in the Rose Palace, we see that same filthy bastard is having tea with Theo's mother. He reports to her that he's never seen anyone as talentless as her son, but then he flashes a broad grin, saying that's precisely why he's here. The true teacher, Rondon, will do his best to make Theo strong enough for the awakening ceremony in 5 months at least. The Lady of the Rose Palace, Cecilia Ragnar, says she'll happily leave him in Rondon's capable hands. She also hands over a bag full of gold coins, telling him to give Theo a bit more attention. The filthy bastard takes the money and tries to reassure her that she doesn't have to worry. In response, she says she isn't worried at all because she believes in her Theo. Later, we see Rondon walking down the corridor with the bag of money in his hand, grinning. He's thrilled that he's getting paid such a handsome amount to teach Theo absolutely nothing. He smirks to himself, thinking how mother and son both are imbecile. Not only is he getting paid to train someone from Ragnar's direct line, but he's also going to be rewarded by his other master for leaking all of Theo's secrets and sabotaging his growth. It's an opportunity he's never had before. We then also see Theo in the corridor, sprinting at full speed, and he zooms right past Rondon. His so-called master just scoffs and calls him an idiotic loser as he runs by. Theo was running to meet his mother, and as he approaches, he calls out to her. When she turns around, she sees him completely out of breath. Without a word, Theo hugs her tightly and begins to cry, overwhelmed by the feeling to see her alive. This moment finally convinces him that he really has returned 10 years into the past. The painful memory flashes in his mind when Rondon forced him to watch his mother's lifeless body. But now, seeing her alive fills him with genuine happiness. He is now determined to change the future for her sake. If that mysterious system window is real, he knows he can grow stronger with the help of Ragnar's talent trait. He's sure he'll be powerful enough to hold his ground in the damned war for the throne. Most importantly, he's determined to get strong enough to take revenge on that piece of shit Rondon. The second tutorial quest arrives, telling Theo to train his body to the limit. It's still early in the morning, and the sun hasn't even risen yet, but Theo is already hard at work, fueled by thoughts of revenge against Rondon. He knows he needs to get stronger as soon as possible. In his previous life, he was part of an intelligence agency known as Black Word, but he was relegated to the information and was never given any major role because he lacked the combat skills. He never expected he would end up using the information he gathered back then like this. One thing he remembers is the potion that greatly empowers the body, known as the Bloody Sword Emperor Elixir. Its true worth will be revealed in the future through the secret manuals. Most importantly, he recalls the extreme training he had given up on because of his lack of talent. But now that he has the Ragnar talent, he's sure that he can gain strength if he works hard. His face twists with happiness as he notices that his running speed is increasing, and the system window promptly shows his progress as well. Other clan members have also appeared in the training halls, and they're quite bewildered to see him running without getting tired. They wonder if he's always been this fit. Afterward, he swings his sword and can definitely see that he's swinging faster than ever before. A few days later, we find him practicing in the dead of night. It's then that we also meet the training ground manager, Evelyn Nerveville, who is yawning and feeling tired. She reflects on how he's been training without sleep for days, and she starts to wonder if he really is the talentless fool people say he is. On the other hand, Theo is so tired that he feels like he's about to collapse, but seeing that progress bar going higher and higher keeps his spirits up. Just last night, he was totally wiped out from all the training. He had hit 90% progress, but right at that moment, his percentage dropped to 89 just because he took a little time to rest. That's exactly why he's been practicing relentlessly, pushing himself without a second thought about what speed even means. Now he's hit 98%, so he picks up his speed, knowing he's almost there. After this final push, he's exhausted and can barely breathe, but there's still 1% left to achieve. Somehow, he manages to push through, and finally, his sweat pays off as he sees the 3-digit number he's been craving for so long. The system promptly congratulates him for successfully completing the tutorial quest and informs him that he has obtained the dragon heart as a reward. But before he can read all those juicy details, he just faints from exhaustion, while the system hovers over him, asking if he wants to receive the reward now. His hand trembles as he tries to lift his finger, but he manages to press the yes button. As soon as he receives the reward, a blue light engulfs him, and the hall manager watches in disbelief as he undergoes this power-up. A while later, we see him in a room. As soon as he opens his eyes and looks around, Evelyn appears and reassures him that he's in the break room of Training Ground 4, and reminds him that there was no need for him to push that hard. When Theo spots her, he recognizes her right away, which surprises her that he remembers her and goes on to introduce herself formally as the manager of the 4th training ground. She explains that he lost consciousness while training alone earlier in the morning, so she brought him here to rest for a while. He thanks her for her kindness, and she offers him some water while reminding him that, within the Ragnar clan, opening one's mana hall before the official awakening ceremony is strictly forbidden. Theo has no idea why she's bringing this up but agrees, saying he's aware of the rule. She then asks if he knows why did he break it. He still looks unsure and asks why she's questioning him like this. That's when she reminds him that right when he lost consciousness, there was a mana wave that perfectly matched the opening of a mana hall. With a menacing look, she demands to know if he opened his mana hall. Theo is completely clueless about what she's talking about, but then he finally remembers the incident that took place before he passed out. As we know, he received the dragon heart as a reward, and as a bonus for clearing the quest early, he also gained the magic power of 10 of his past lives. When he recalls this, he's at a total loss for words, because getting a dragon heart is no walk in the park. You see, a dragon heart is special because a mana hall can be placed within it. Placing a mana hall in the heart allows it to operate more efficiently. However, humans, unlike dragons, typically place their mana halls in the lower abdomen because the human heart can't handle that kind of power. That's why every warrior, especially those in the Ragnar clan, longs for a dragon heart, and it's the quickest way to become overwhelmingly powerful without placing the mana hall into the abdomen. However, humans have never been able to overcome the natural limitations of their heart. But now, with the dragon heart given to Theo as a quest reward, he's in an awkward situation. The rewards are incredible, but it's clear that this has put him in a tricky spot. On top of that, he is sitting before Evelyn Neville, a high-ranking swordswoman, who is now retired after losing her left arm and has become the manager of the training grounds. Evelyn was the commanding officer of the white-armored dragon cavalry, and her skills were so remarkable that even the demon dragon revered her. Known for her fierce principles, she was not the type to care about status or strength. She could not tolerate dishonesty or cowardice. At one point, when she found him inflexible, she relinquished her position as his direct master. In other words, if she discovers his dragon heart and mana hall, he could very well lose his head. But he smiles because he has a plan in mind. As long as he doesn't get caught, there's nothing to worry about. He makes a sassy comeback to her accusations, asking how she can talk about executing him just based on her gut feeling. He asks if she can handle the consequences of her words. The girl falls silent, unable to counter his question. Theo further tries to demoralize her by reminding her that he is also an heir of the Ragnar clan. If they find out that the suspicions against him are baseless and false, it could be seen as defiling the Ragnar name. She agrees, acknowledging that these are the rules. With a menacing look on his face, he asks her if she knows what the punishment is for humiliating an heir. She confidently replies that it's execution. He is glad that she understands, and tells her to think before she speaks. The lady is blown away to see this new side of him and wonders if this is the same person she knew. In any case, she's sure that what she saw was definitely a mana wave, so she decides to investigate further. Even if he is of Ragnar's bloodline, rules are rules, and she intends to hold him accountable. However, she soon realizes that he actually doesn't have a mana hall. Her expression quickly falls as she understands she might have been wrong. Theo just feels cocky and asks her if she's satisfied now. According to the rules, she sits down at his feet and, without a shred of hesitation, tells him to just execute her, claiming she will pay for her sins with her lowly life. As she bows her head lower and lower, he reveals to us that dragon hearts are different from ordinary mana halls. The existence of a dragon heart is essentially a mana hall that can be controlled freely by its user. In other words, he can hide his mana at will. Plus, the fact that humans can also possess a dragon heart will only be discovered a few years later, so Theo is confident that no one can accuse him of having one. Instead of executing her, he places a reassuring hand on her back and tells her there's no need for that. He walks away, saying she did her job and that not many would risk their lives to demand the truth from an heir, which he appreciates about her righteousness. But the truth is, Theo just doesn't want to kill her because she is one of the strongest. Keeping her alive would benefit him in the long run. He then explains that the restriction on opening mana halls before the awakening ceremony is meant to prevent overflow. He's glad to see her concerned about someone like him, who is a bastard of Ragnar. And with that, he leaves her sitting there quietly. Theo walks confidently, feeling on top of the world as he recalls that not only does he have the dragon heart, but he also gained 10 years worth of magic power from his past life. A few days later, we run into this shithead once again, screaming at Theo, telling him to swing a bit more to the right. It seems like Theo is pretending to be weak, and it's getting harder to listen to Randon insult him every chance he gets. Theo can't help but notice how this bastard is subtly but deliberately teaching him weird sword techniques. He's becoming more certain that there's a mastermind behind Randon's actions, and he's convinced that the person who gave him that final blow in his previous life must be the true mastermind. Theo decides it's time to find out who that mastermind is, and a smirk spreads across his face as he realizes what he should do next. Randon, meanwhile, keeps yelling at him, and that's when Theo snaps the stick he was holding in two. He lets this jerk know that he can't listen to his yapping anymore because his lessons are utter trash. He further asks this piece of work how he even became a mid-rank swordsman with the trash skills of his. To further provoke him, Theo reminds him that he'd probably struggle even against demonic beasts. Of course, Randon takes the bait and is fuming at this point, but Theo isn't backing down either. He strides toward the old man and makes it clear once again that his skills are pathetic. We soon learn that Theo's plan is to provoke Randon into resigning from his position. And if things go south with Randon, Theo is certain this bastard will contact his mastermind. The scene then transitions to Camellia Palace, where we see a man bursting into a pub with a big grin on his face. He calls out to someone named Axion and announces to everyone that the bastard of Ragnar is going to duel his master next week. The man in question, Axion, just sits there silently, unable to even lift his glass from the table. Meanwhile, the excited guy keeps going on about how Theo was blaming his instructor for his lack of talent, and is confident that Theo will be left disabled after the duel. Suddenly, the glass Axion was holding smashes into the loud guy's face, knocking him out cold with a single hit. The guy is seriously pissed off, and makes it clear that he doesn't care if some bastard ends up half-disabled. Of course he doesn't care. After all, he's just another Ragnar, specifically, the Four Hounds of the North, Dark Tiger Axion Ragnar. The man standing next to him is Remington Narcio, one of the Four Hounds of the North, Silver Lion. Just then, another guy makes his entrance, and this pissed-off man is Ed Troyven, the Nine-Dragon Sky Dragon. He looks particularly worried and says that things might go wrong if they let their guard down. But Axion reassures him that this is only true for people with talent, so they don't need to worry about Theo, who is essentially a muddle-headed nobody. However, Ed points out that with the Ragnar clan, unprecedented things can happen, even from the slightest possibility. Axion responds that it's actually a good thing that Theo is trying to mess with Randon, which means that the instructor should be more than capable of handling our boy. A week later, people gather at Training Ground 4, and it's not just members of the clan. There are also other big shots in attendance. In the arena, we see Theo, who appears quite anxious standing under the gaze of hundreds of spectators. He curses himself, recalling how he just wanted to get this shithead fired after the humiliation, but things have spiraled out of control. However, he isn't too worried since this was supposed to happen, and he's fired up to get revenge on Randon. The system notification confirms that his third tutorial quest is to fight Randon and win. We then flash back to a moment when Theo confronted Randon about his pathetic skills, telling him that he's fired and can get lost. Randon tries to protest, claiming there's still time left on the contract, but Theo counters that since he's fired by the employer himself, there's nothing left to discuss. Theo would have loved to punch this bastard in the face, but he isn't sure about his abilities. On the other hand, Randon can't afford to get fired since he hasn't accomplished his main goal yet. As he walks toward our boy, trying to convince him otherwise, a system window flashes right before Theo's eyes, stating that he must fight and win against Randon. This blindsides him, and at the same moment, Evelyn Neville pops into the scene, encouraging Theo to resolve this matter the Ragnar way, which is the rule of the strong. A sword match will decide everything, eliminating the need for a tribunal. They should just follow the will of the victor. The old bastard finds his chance and quickly agrees that this is a brilliant idea to solve the dispute. This leaves Theo at a loss for what to do while Evelyn keeps insisting that this is a great idea. However, Theo isn't so sure about it. He doesn't feel ready to beat this bastard yet. But eventually, Theo finds himself confronting Randon. The people in the crowd smirk among themselves, sharing how pathetic Theo is. They whisper that he doesn't even know how to swing his sword, and are sure he's going to get crippled today, because there's no way he can beat a mid-rank swordsman. Randon then cockily tells our hero that if he apologizes now, he'll pretend nothing happened, as there's no need to risk his life over his pride. But Theo has sass for days and fires back, saying that Randon should be the one apologizing. He warns the old bastard that if he doesn't want to become a one-armed swordsman, it would be best for him to accept that he's been fired and leave quietly. Randon simply smirks with a big grin on his face, thinking about how this fight is in his hands. He decides to take advantage of the opportunity to kill Theo while pretending it's just an accident. Once the battle starts, Rendon invites our boy to come at him first, offering the first strike as his teacher. Theo charges at him with his sword raised, and everyone's jaw drops when they see this imbecile charging recklessly, not even knowing how to swing his sword properly. Rendon delivers a few sword strikes, but Theo manages to safeguard himself. Meanwhile, the old bastard continues his barrage of swings. As he corners Theo, he thinks to himself that this is the obvious result. After all, Theo isn't even a low-ranked swordsman, he's an apprentice swordsman. He strongly believes that while Theo's skills may have improved slightly, it's still not enough. He admits that if Theo were at least at the level of the 4 Hounds of the North, it would be a different story. But in his mind, there's no way this imbecile from the Ragnar clan could ever beat him. The scene then transitions to a few days earlier, where Theo turns to Evelyn and asks her what she was thinking when she suggested the match. She simply replies that she was trying to help him. If he wants to cut Rendon out, he needs to be strategic about it, as she strongly believes Rendon has someone backing him up, so just firing him won't solve the problem. Theo asks her how she knows all this, to which she responds that it was obvious since Rendon was teaching him a bizarre sword style. She had someone secretly investigate him. Theo is bewildered to hear this. Evelyn didn't bother to catch this person in his past life, but now she's making an effort to expose him just because he caught her interest due to the Manhwa incident. She explains that her investigation revealed that all of Rondon's traces lead back to Camellia Palace. Well, this isn't surprising to Theo. He's more annoyed to realize that all of this is happening because of the miserable war for the throne. But then he quickly dispels his anger and annoyance, saying it's surprising she deduced this much. He explains that with his current skills, he's afraid he can't beat Rendon yet, so he asks her what she plans to do now. To this, Evelyn tells him that he can beat Rendon, and advises him to stop underestimating his own potential too much. Back in the fight, Rendon keeps throwing one blow after another, but Theo fends off all of these attacks as if they're no big deal. This is making Rendon wonder what happened to this brat, as he's clearly not the Theo Ragnar he knew. The tables have completely turned, and now it's Rendon who's struggling. Everyone in the crowd can feel the constipation of defeat. We also see this hoodie guy, Remington, and he is also shitting his pants in some corner of the seating area, though I'm not entirely sure if he is Remington. Meanwhile, Evelyn is having the time of her life watching the fight. For some reason, she's really proud of him. Then, the scene shifts to the past, and we find out that in just 1 week, she's the one who personally trained him. She admits it is technically against the rules for her to do so, but since Rendon is a jerk, he doesn't deserve to be a teacher anyway. This revelation puts a smirk on our boy's face. He's feeling a mix of excitement and arousal, convinced that having Evelyn in his debt was totally worth it after all. However, there's one thing he's concerned about. He wants to know what's her real reason for going so far to help him. He asks if it's because of what happened last time. She agrees that's true to some extent, but she also mentions there's someone she knows who would like him, because that guy is obsessed with collecting talent. Back in the present, the battle rages on, and Rendon is getting more desperate by the minute. He starts to wonder if this brat has been acting like an idiot and pretending to be weak on purpose all this time. In the middle of the fight, our boy asks him who's backing him, which makes the old bastard lash out, questioning what he means by that. But Theo reminds him that he already knows he was teaching him trash lessons on purpose. He finally gets blunt and asks if he's working with Camellia Palace. This revelation leaves the old coot stunned for a moment, and the old man's reaction confirms to Theo that it's true. With that cleared up, our guy swings his sword the very next moment, severing the old man's hand. The amputated hand flies through the air, leaving the crowd absolutely boggled. The wannabe teacher cries out in pain and starts cursing under his breath. Theo strides confidently toward this shithead, finally feeling like he's actually gotten stronger. He reminds this old bastard of the words he had said in his past life. It was his fault things had come to this because he had been a weak, talentless fool. With a menacing swing of his sword, Theo throws those same words in the old man's face, reminding him that he is the weakest one here. He tells the old man that given Ragnar's belief in the rule of the strong, someone as weak as him shouldn't have come here. Then, with one final swing, the sword comes down, and this fucker's head rolls across the ground, leaving the blood splattering everywhere. The system window pops up promptly, congratulating him for successfully completing Tutorial Quest 3. Not only did he win the fight, but he also exceeded the objective, so he's earned a bonus reward. The system asks if he wants to receive the reward now, and of course we already know what his choice is. Everyone in the crowd has finally sharted their pants. It's mind-boggling to witness an apprentice swordsman just slaughter a mid-tier swordsman like that. Meanwhile, our guy is feeling like this old bastard was ridiculously weak. He's actually embarrassed that he ever suffered at the hands of someone like that in his past life. But hey, things are definitely different this time around. The system then reveals that the ability known as Observation has been activated as a reward, and as an additional bonus, he's gained 1 year of magic power. That's when a man comes crashing down from the sky, slamming into the ground like a goddamn meteor. Before our boy can even react, this man shouts Theo's name as he grins widely. The man in question is none other than Julius Ragnar, the demon dragon and commander of the white-armored dragon cavalry. Theo is absolutely stunned to see him. He can't believe it's really him and starts wondering how long he's been watching this whole time. Meanwhile, the crowd starts losing their minds, because this man is the commander of the white-armored dragon cavalry, and everyone's freaking out, trying to figure out why someone of his rank is even here. I think this is the guy Evelyn was talking about, the one who likes collecting talent. We then see Evelyn herself, absolutely devastated and dejected that the commander has literally destroyed the flooring with his landing. On the other hand, Julius looks like a literal beast, and his terrifying appearance leaves Theo sweating and completely unsure of what to do next. But his worries seem unwarranted as the man just laughs, flashing a big broad grin. He looks like a friendlier version of Brutus from Popeye the Sailor Man show. He gives gentle pats to our boy, which let's be honest are not so gentle. He continues to laugh, saying he's quite surprised to see someone carrying this much talent with him. He adds that it was a little disrespectful to kill his teacher, but he admits Rondon deserved every bit of it. Then, he bursts into laughter again as he pats Theo over his shoulder, and then promptly invites him to join the white-armored dragon cavalry. Evelyn had already expected this much, while everyone in the crowd is left with their jaws hanging open. They're struggling to believe that the infamous Julius Ragnar has scouted someone as inexperienced as him to join the elite white-armored knights. That's when we catch a glimpse of Remington once again. He asks a guy nearby if he's ever heard of a case where an apprentice swordsman who hasn't even undergone the awakening ceremony has been scouted. The stranger looks unsure how to respond and admits he's never heard of such an occurrence. Of course, Remington knows this too. It hasn't happened in the entire history of their world. Meanwhile, we hear our hero's thoughts. He thinks it's impossible to gauge someone's true potential while their mana hall is closed. Even if their swordsmanship is exceptional, their magical power could be lacking. So, no matter how great Julius Ragnar is, he can't be entirely sure if Theo has any potential. Still, he wonders if the demon dragon Julius can see that kind of potential in someone like him. Theo quickly declines the offer to join, doing so flatly, without a shred of hesitation or doubt on his face. Julius is left looking like he just bit into a sour lemon. The crowd is in shock as well, their jaws hanging open at how coldly Theo turned down such a prestigious man. There's a moment of silence in the entire hall as everyone processes what just happened. As the day passes, news of the incident spreads throughout the clan. Everyone is talking about how this young master Theo, seen as an imbecile, destroyed his teacher, and when the demon dragon tried to scout him into the white-armored dragon cavalry, he turned down the opportunity. Opinions are divided on whether he's being humble or just arrogant. The scene transitions to Carmelia Palace, where we see a lady who looks pretty pissed off that Rondon has been killed and everything has gone off the rails. She is actually the lady of the Carmelia Palace, Emil Ragnar. A man steps in to assure her not to worry, reminding her that Rondon was a noob, assigned only because of his terrible skills. She brushes it off, stating that his death isn't a major concern. The man speaking to her is her brother, Sky Dragon Ed Troyven, whom we've seen before at the pub. She explains that the demon dragon personally reached out to Theo, and what's even more troubling is that people are saying Evelyn ordered it. This means they can't interfere by assigning Theo a new master anymore. If Theo starts to stand out, it'll become much harder to take control of the Rose Palace. At that moment, Axion enters the scene, casually asking why they're so worried. He reassures them that there's no way the clan head will take an interest in this situation, and their plan can proceed as usual. Emil asks if he understands that the best way to take control of the Rose Palace without offending the clan leader is for Theo to remain powerless. Her son acknowledges this and says he knows it already, adding that he's certain Theo is still powerless. After all, how much could someone like him really have changed? He believes that Evelyn and the demon dragon have always been interested in underdogs, so there's no reason to make a big deal out of it. But Ed Troyven isn't vibing with his nephew's nonchalance and warns him not to take the situation lightly. That's when Axion pulls out a letter and, with a sly grin, says that since his mother and uncle are so worried, he'll just play with Theo a little and remind him of his place. Later, the scene transitions to the training grounds, where Evelyn is giving Theo props for his good practice session. He thanks her back, saying it's definitely different learning from a proper master like her. She then mentions that it would have been better if he had joined the white-armored dragon cavalry, and she is curious about why he declined the offer. Theo thinks to himself before responding. He considers how it would be a lie to say he didn't regret rejecting that juicy offer since it was his dream in his past life. However, he just smirks, thinking that joining now would be detrimental for him. There's no reason to limit himself this early in the game. When he thinks about the privileges that will come with being at the top after the awakening ceremony, getting into the white-armored dragon cavalry doesn't even compare. So he just smiles and says he didn't want to receive any special privileges and that he still feels he's not ready. He's satisfied just training with her for the awakening ceremony. Evelyn then reminds him that the commander will probably be disappointed after being rejected like that. At that moment, Theo decides to use his observation skill for the first time. He reads all of her stats, and without a doubt, she's a high-ranking swordswoman. He learns that she admires his humility and character, and she feels a sense of energy and purpose teaching him, which is something she hasn't felt in a long time. We also read that she misses the white-armored dragon cavalry. Theo is thrilled to realize just how useful this observation skill is. He then squints a little and notes the last line about Evelyn missing the white-armored dragon cavalry, which he finds quite surprising. That's when a guy enters the scene, introducing himself as Sybil Drea. He mentions that he's come from the Southern Inspection Post, and has something he needs to discuss with Theo. Theo finds this guy a bit intimidating, and isn't sure what this discussion is going to be about. He then decides to use his observation skill again, and he learns that Sybil possesses a strong longing to spar with him. The revelation makes him sweat with anxiety, and he feels terrified at the thought of fighting someone with such a scary face. Right on cue, the system notification pops up, showing the 4th tutorial quest. His main goal is to discard the title of Imbecile of Ragnar, and he has already made almost 28% progress. Sybil Drea was quite frank with his intentions. He declared that he wanted to follow the young master Theo. He even honestly confessed that he was one part of the masses that just ignored the seemingly untalented Ragnar. He used to believe that the title of Ragnar's imbecile was a perfect fit. Theo appreciated the honesty, but he could not help but feel a little pissed off. The bastard was practically bad-mouthing him without realizing what he was saying. Sybil had a change of heart when he came to learn that the young master came out every morning to train harder than anyone else. Moreover, he was honored to see the results of such efforts in the fight against that fraud, Rendon Harvey. Sybil reveled at the sight of the instructor's head flying in the air. He was astounded to see Theo's miraculous growth firsthand. The sight of demon dragon Julius Ragnar personally inviting the young master to the white-armored dragon cavalry was etched on his mind. Sybil proclaimed that Theo had become his idol from that point on. He wanted to give up on himself after being called the idiot of the Southern Inspection Office, but that changed when Theo appeared. All he wanted was the opportunity to clash swords with his hero. The young man's frankness was quite shocking. Usually Theo would doubt anyone's true intentions, but the observation skill showed the young man's true nature. Sybil Drea held a strong respect for Theo, and all he really wanted was a spar. Everything points to him being genuine. It was a little unexpected, but Theo was pleased. After taking down Rendon, and as the rumor of him receiving Lord Julius's attention spread, Theo thought that people with their debilitating inferiority complex would swarm to test him. He never expected that there would be people who would admire and willingly follow him instead. That means some people still have Ragnar's pride in their veins. This could work out perfectly, as Theo would need people he could trust in his circle too. He will need competent subordinates if he wants to become the clan head of Ragnar after all. Furthermore, he could use this situation to progress the final tutorial quest to get rid of his imbecile title. It was a moniker that he had never been able to escape from in his past life. With the new opportunities that the system provides, he was determined to completely abandon the shameful title altogether. Theo turned to Evelyn to ask permission to spar, and his new master gladly obliged, urging him to show off his skills. With his blade in salute, he formally introduced himself as Theo Ragnar, the apprentice swordsman of the Rose Palace, awaiting the awakening ceremony under the guidance of Master Evelyn Nareville. The one-armed swordmaster smiled with approval. Sybil Drea clumsily saluted back as he introduced himself as an apprentice swordsman of the Southern Inspection Post. He inherited the swordsmanship of the Kurai clan and focused on the quicksword. Finally, the sparring session started, and Sybil blasted off the ground. He looked like a madman going for the kill right from the get-go. Theo blocked the first attack, causing their blades to spark in the collision. The idiot of the Southern Inspection Post was undeniably quick. His speed was the one thing that he was incredibly confident about. Just from their first exchange, Sybil could already feel that the young master's skill was the real deal. Meanwhile, Theo was wondering why the kid was labeled an idiot in the first place. If he faced this guy in his previous life, he would have struggled to take even just a few hits. But of course, he had come a long way from the previous him. Theo went on the offensive and swung his blade to send Sybil flying like a rag doll, losing grip on his sword. For the current Theo, this was child's play. Poor Sybil almost threw up his insides from the excessive force that hit his solar plexus. He eventually crashed against the training area's stands. Fortunately, he wasn't gravely injured. Sybil tried his best to stand up and praise young Master Theo's mastery of the sword. He immediately conceded the loss with gratitude. Theo remained graceful in victory and saluted the young man, telling him that it was a good fight. While holding his sword in salute, he stared at his reflection from the dazzling blade. An idea struck his mind. Maybe he can also use the observation skill on himself. Upon activation, he discovered that it does work. His talents included observation, player, Ragnar, and a bunch more beyond his current access. He's a level 1 swordsman with balanced stats and an abnormally high 190 points in magic power. Now that he has finally perceived stat points, they will be notated with numbers from now on. Under talent, his abilities were on full display. Based on the currently locked slots, he can just keep doing quests to get at least 4 more. Being able to check his own stat values anytime he wanted was also a great discovery. Theo attributed his abnormally high magic power stat to his past life's magic and the dragon heart beating on his chest. What he did not like was his negative 49 points in luck. He wondered if he was cursed to have such an abysmal luck stat. Maybe all the misfortune he suffered in his previous life was all because of this rotten luck. He definitely needs to figure out a way to increase his luck as fast as he can. Theo was so focused on his spar and evaluating his status that he failed to notice the crowd of young men standing all around the arena. They have practically formed a circle surrounding him, their intentions unknown. He considered that no matter how weak and trashy his previous instructor was, that bastard was still a mid-rank swordsman. Since he beheaded Randon, the fraud, and received the approval of a respected commander, the emergence of these young swordsmen was natural. With its rule of the strong motto, there could only be 2 reactions from the people under Ragnar's rule. It's either they become envious of Theo, or he becomes the subject of their undying admiration. As for the ones gathered in the arena, Evelyn could plainly see their stance. They belonged to the latter. They were amazed to see that the rumors regarding the young master were true. Respect and approval were evident in their eyes. Each of them imagined being in Sybil's shoes for the spar, and each one of them wondered if they could even block Theo's sword. This thought only spurred their desire to clash blades with the young master further. One of these young swordsmen was Eod Nalan. Theo scanned the crowd and was pleased with their reaction. He singled out Eod Nalan, surprising the young man. The young master called him to come forward and have a spar. Eod Nalan stalwartly saluted and introduced himself as the 3rd son of Viscount Nalan, specializing in the double ascension swordsmanship. Theo returned the salute and casually wished for a good fight. Without wasting any more breaths with formality, the fighters assumed positions and started going at it. With each clash of their blades, Theo's basic swordsmanship proficiency steadily increased. Eod was no pushover. He was fast and clever enough to sneak a slash that seemingly had no immediate counter. At that moment, Theo felt like the world slowed down. He shifted the grip on his sword and met the attack with a perfectly angled block. It was enough to make Eod's blade fly away from his hand. The crucial block increased Theo's proficiency in the changing heart swordsmanship. Eod was stripped of his sword. It was a clear and utter defeat in the hands of the young master. The young man acknowledged his loss and gave his eternal approval to Theo. Much to Theo's surprise, gaining Eod's approval also increased his luck. Maybe luck is tied to his reputation. If that was the case, he just found a method to remedy his abysmal luck. He could just keep on fighting until he literally turns his luck around. Next on the chopping block was Benat Ramiro. That was an easy dub. With another gained approval, his luck increased by another 1 point. Then came Eric Moran. He put up a decent struggle, but it was a struggle nonetheless. Next was the approval of Manfred Nonbert. Without stopping his sparring onslaught, he wiped the floor with Manuel Noir. The thuggish-looking Viro Perenc did not even last a whole minute. After a while, Theo was wholly immersed in battle as he continued his winning streak with Daniel Riemann. By the time he was done with most of the young swordsmen, he was itching for more. He called the next challenger, but no one was stepping up to the plate. He fought so much to the point of near exhaustion, but upon checking his quest progress to escape the imbecile title, it had only progressed by 1%. Maybe it's because these people have already approved of him. He might need to seek stronger foes or show off his skills in front of the people who still look down on him. Either way, he's going to need something different. Suddenly, a man parted the crowd, telling Theo that he looked exhausted. He argued that he'll rest when the need arises, but right now, he can still fight. Since he claimed that he's still in shape to fight, the armored man dubbed as the Silver Lion, Remington Narcio formally asked for a sparring match. Theo and the crowd of young swordsmen were not expecting so esteemed to show up. Remington's one of the 4 Hounds of the North, after all. The 4 Hounds of the North consisted of Hulkus Lanka, Ray Ragnar, Remington Narcio, and finally, Camellia Palace's very own Axion Ragnar. They hold the title of the 4 strongest people within the Awakening Ceremony generation under the Ragnar clan. Remington Narcio claimed to have come early to observe the swordsmanship of the young lord before the Awakening Ceremony. Saluting with a smile on his face, Remington thanked Theo for honoring his request. The Silver Lion is a talented sword genius with keen senses and an outstanding work ethic. Right now, he's just surprised at the appearance of an unexpected rival in the form of Theo. Theo Ragnar returned the salute with pride. This time, he introduced himself as the 31st son of the great guardian of the North, Kyle Ragnar. He never expected to meet, let alone spar with the sword genius Remington. He respected this man in his past life. When he stated that he was honored to be able to cross swords against the famed young deputy clan head of Narcio, he meant it. Immersed in the intoxicating vibe of fighting non-stop, Theo just wanted to show Remington his skills. Both of them are looking forward to a great fight. Theo watched as the Silver Lion's aura exploded to a terrifying degree, and he wondered if his current self could actually defeat Remington. Both fighters charged forward, their blades colliding and sparks flying. How strong could one of the four hounds of the North be? Each one of their clashes shook the stage fiercely. Theo kept his eyes on the prize as shards of steel flew all over the arena. Remington smiled as he did the same. One of the fighters' swords was cleanly cut after sustaining quite a bit of wear and tear. Evelyn did not let her gaze wander as she watched closely. The young swordsmen who were defeated at the hands of Theo were speechless. In the middle of the deathly silent arena, the broken blade's clanging noise as it hit the ground reverberated. It was Theo's sword. In a single clash of sheer strength, Remington sliced his blade cleanly, stopping his attack inches away from lopping Theo's head off. To everyone who saw what happened, the result was clear. Young Master Theo lost. Sybil refused to believe that his idol would be trounced so quickly, but it was the obvious result. They resigned to the fact that no matter how much Theo had grown, it was still impossible for him to beat one of the four hounds. They were the strongest of the current generation for a reason. Sybil argued that the fighting spirit Theo demonstrated was more than enough to admire. Much to every bystander's surprise, the White Lion suddenly declared that the duel was his loss. He respectfully saluted Theo. His form was impeccable as he humbly thanked the young lord for the duel. Remington asserted that Theo's sword was already worn out by the time they started, not to mention the fatigue he was feeling after multiple fights. Theo insisted that on a battlefield no one would offer such considerations, so he already accepted his defeat the moment he lost his blade. Remington returned with an understanding smile. The White Lion and the imbecile shook hands. A more profound respect for one another formed between the unlikely tandem. Remington genuinely hoped that they could have a proper duel in a more ideal setting next time, and Theo did too. Everyone watched in surprise as Theo was acknowledged by one of the four hounds, thinking that the young master really was built different. The duel with Remington raised his quest progress up to 35%, a massive jump, all things considered. Evelyn sighed in relief from the sidelines. This could not have ended more perfectly. Theo finally had a gauge of just how strong the hounds were, thanks to Remington's display of power. By obtaining talent and secret manuals through quests, Theo had become incomparably stronger than he was in the past. But he felt true power the moment he crossed blades with the White Lion. He was reminded that he's still greatly lacking in a lot of aspects. It was a shame that the duel fizzled out thanks to his current condition, but he still gained a lot from the brief exchange. His luck increased by 10, and his reputation has dramatically improved. As for the quest, he's still a long way from finishing it all at once, so he might have to actively look for other methods. He needs to set a stage to gain approval. Remington confessed that he did not come to this place for a simple duel. He actually wanted to extend an important letter to Theo. It was a formal invitation to the so-called Scaled Dragon Society. Just hearing the name of the Scaled Dragon Society made all the young swordsmen's blood rush to their heads. It's a high society group with an exhaustive selection process. Furthermore, Remington himself was inviting the young master. To be invited to the Scaled Dragon Society was an honor for any rising star. Theo modestly asked if it would really be okay for him to be admitted to the club. The White Lion hurriedly assured him that he was more than qualified. Besides, he insisted that it was not that serious of a group in the first place. Most of the prominent members simply view it as a social group for peers waiting for the upcoming awakening ceremony. Theo can't discern if Remington had ulterior motives for this invite, but he knows that the Scaled Dragon Society is currently centered around his half-brother, Axion. It's a gathering filled with snakes who look at him with contempt and ridicule. That also made it the perfect environment for Theo to progress in his quest. In addition, it would allow him to do some recon on Axion and the Camellia Palace. Seeing no reason to refuse, Theo took the letter of invitation and formally thanked Remington for going out of his way. He promised to participate and enter the den of his enemies. Remington happily shook his hands, glad to have roped in another rising star. He also told Theo to never hesitate to ask him about anything. The meeting will be in 2 weeks, so that's all the time he has to prepare and set up a plan. Evelyn took a drag of her cigarette, seemingly worried about his new disciple. Moments later, the news of Theo getting invited to the high society gathering reached the Rose Palace. Theo's mom, Cecilia, burst into his room with an excited smile plastered on her face. He was just about to personally deliver the news, but that doesn't seem necessary anymore. Cecilia had already gathered the palace's grooming team to his room. Since he had been invited to participate in something significant for the first time, his mom was naturally excited. It was a club featuring Axion, the son of that cunning Amel, and brilliant talents like Remington. The youngsters even garner attention from the council itself. Cecilia knew that everything, from how Theo dresses to how he composes himself, would be under close scrutiny. She took out a tape measure and started taking Theo's sizes. Cecilia knows that her boy would show no fault when it comes to etiquette, but attire and demeanor are different matters entirely. Fortunately, this was a facet of high society that Cecilia could personally help him with. She used to be a successful actress, after all. She was just glad to be involved and to be of assistance to her dear son. Theo knows that his mother had always carried the weight of having an illegitimate child as a commoner concubine. Cecilia carried the guilt of giving her son such a shameful label, even though that was not her fault at all. In the cold Ragnar clan, where strength trumps all, he could only imagine how hard it must have been for her to have such a weak child in the past life. Cecilia might be acting excited and joyful, but deep inside, she was a mother concerned about her son's well-being and nothing else. She held Theo tightly and assured him that his mother would always believe in him, that he'll be able to do anything. The warmth of his mother's embrace melted the coldness in Theo's heart. She returned the embrace and held his mother with love. This time around, he's determined to work his ass off to stop making his mom worry about him. While she was excited at the thought of her son joining the Scaled Dragon Society, all Theo could think of was pulverizing the whole damn snake's nest. 2 weeks later, the night of the society banquet arrived. Remington personally came by the Rose Palace to pick Theo up in a lavish carriage. As soon as he saw the young man, he thought he was seeing a different person. Theo had ditched his training clothes and obtained some exquisite drip thanks to his mother and the palace staff. Instead of a warrior, he looked more like an aristocrat. Remington commented on his new look, and Theo took it as a joke. The White Lion wasn't joking. He was genuinely impressed by the young master's transformation. Theo had to admit that his body had undergone a massive overhaul. He grew taller, his muscles developed perfectly, and all of this was a result of a mere 2 weeks of diligent training. During those 2 weeks, Remington surprisingly came to see him to train together every day, and they have gotten pretty close now. He also gained quite a decent following with Sybil and the others. Evelyn was saddled with teaching a whole battalion of Theo fanatics when she only agreed to teach the young master for a short interim. It was a lively 2 weeks of training, to say the least. Even now, Theo was still recovering from interacting with so many overeager people. Today, he's headed to his first formal banquet. Remington assured him that there was no need to be nervous. But the White Lion left him with a single warning. He explained that his friend, Axion, can be very mischievous at times. It was actually Axion who made the invitation to Theo, saying he wanted to meet the new rising star. Moreover, this entire banquet had been prepared for Theo's sake. Getting all this information certainly changes things. Not for the worse, mind you. This was actually better for Theo. He's already looking forward to being greatly insulted left and right. At the banquet hall, the Dark Tiger, Axion Ragnar, had already started sipping on expensive booze. He was quite excited to turn the imbecile of Ragnar into his new toy. The carriage pulled up in front of a lavish palace, signaling their arrival at the banquet's venue. Remington and Theo got out of the carriage. The young lord immediately scanned the place. He's about to enter the Camellia Palace, the home court of the scum who instigated Raindone to interfere with his growth. In the past life, they consumed him, his mother, and the entirety of the Rose Palace without mercy. His thoughts of vengeance were interrupted by Remington's invitation to go in. The lively Remington had received news that Axion would personally come and greet them, and he should be waiting at the entrance by now. It was obvious why that bastard Axion invited him in the first place. The fool must be thinking that since the imbecile of Ragnar is acting up, it's up to him to stop Theo's momentum. But the young master did not willingly come inside the snake's nest without a plan either. He will make Axion understand just who he's trying to mess with. As they got close to the palace, Theo stopped in his tracks as soon as he saw something in the corner of his eye. Up on the higher floor of Camellia Palace, the bizarre blue light of a system quest called to him. He was momentarily distracted by a possible quest inside the palace, so he didn't notice something rapidly descending in his position. Remington tried to save him from the unknown material, but it had already exploded with white smog before he could get close. Remington panicked and hurriedly called Theo. Thankfully, he was fine. It was just a sack of white flour aimed at him and launched from up above. Remington was furious at the childish prank. Theo acknowledged that he would not have been able to dodge, and the outfit his mom painstakingly made would have been ruined if this was his previous life. He thought Remington was in on the stunt, but that doesn't seem to be the case. The White Lion was just confused and angry at the unexpected situation. Welcoming him with flour must be the best those dumbasses up top could think of. The one stupid enough to think of something so immature must be those smug nobles watching from the windows. A familiar voice parted the nobles out of the way and asserted that this was just a little greeting between friends. A basic courtesy, if you will. Remington wasn't having any of it, though. He really was angry. Axion finally showed his smug face as he insisted that he was just extending a fun greeting to his brother, Theo. Our boy immediately used his observation skills to assess the Dark Tiger. His talents included madness, psychopathy, and overwhelming swordsmanship potential. He's currently expectant at having found a new toy to play with. Theo smiled and said thanks, confusing his psychopathic brother. He continued that with how welcoming Axion was to him. He was naturally grateful, and he was very much looking forward to the party today. Axion's confusion quickly turned to elation. This brother of his had really become fun since the last time they'd seen each other. Finally, Remington and Theo entered the banquet hall, where every member of the promising noble society was gathered. It was an extremely private event, so only a select few were invited to wine, dine, and converse with their fellow talented peers. Everyone was focused on today's special invite. They can't understand why Axion would invite a bum. Even if Theo is also from a direct line of the Ragnar blood, he's still widely known as the imbecile. Having such trash in the Scaled Dragon Society was an unpleasant surprise for most. They had to admit that the drip was cold, though. Most nobles were privy to the fact that Axion was just playing with his new toy. Seeing as the trashy nobles didn't even bother lowering their voices, Remington apologized to Theo, insisting that these gatherings aren't usually this scandalous. Theo was just letting them talk trash about him as much as they wanted. In fact, the more people badmouth him, the better. That would make crushing them later much sweeter. Also, he noticed that the location of the blue quest light was nearby. He was pretty sure that it could be significant, but he doesn't have a natural way to approach it yet. Axion, the host of the party, descended the stairs to ask his brother if he was enjoying the party. Theo forced himself to calm down and just proceed with his plan as he mapped it out. He smiled and thanked Axion for inviting him again. Axion sarcastically apologized for the flower incident a few minutes ago, playfully admitting that he went a little overboard. He closed the distance between himself and Theo in the blink of an eye, grabbing his brother's shoulders tightly as he pressed Theo to accept his apology in front of everyone. Remington wanted to intervene, but Theo interjected that Axion had nothing to apologize for. He insisted on using Axion's words that the prank was just a greeting between brothers. The psycho was at a loss for words. Theo was just too calm and composed to rattle. He laughed and patted Theo on the back as if he was a proud brother. He never knew that the kid had spunk. He had changed a lot from how he used to be when they were little. Axion actually liked him more and more now. The nobles took in the sight of Theo smiling, going along with his brother's whim, calling him Axion's bitch. They even commented on Theo's illegitimate lineage compared to the noble blood of Troy Van. While it's true that they were half-brothers, the nobles believed that Theo and Axion were on an entirely different level, even if they were both Ragnars. Troyvan clan is the swordsmanship powerhouse of the East, while Theo's mom is just a random woman who came from bumfuck nowhere. Theo smiled as he took in the blatant insults that the nobles were hurling at him, letting it fuel the flame inside. One thing the nobles were confused about was Remington's closeness with the imbecile. They started extending the insults to Remington, calling him an illegitimate son of the Narcio family. The White Lion had been on edge since they arrived at the banquet. Hearing these nobles broach a forbidden topic almost made him snap on the spot. Theo reckoned that in just a few seconds, Remington might just go and steal his spotlight. He was thinking of observing and listening to more insults for a little longer, but that won't do now. Before Axion could take him upstairs, he paused. Since he had just arrived, Theo asserted that he should greet his new friends as well. So, he walked over to the banquet table where the snickering nobles were gathered. All of their eyes focused on the imbecile of Ragnar. Theo quietly took a bottle of wine from the table. He walked towards the noble, who was running his mouth about Remington's lineage, and motioned to fill his glass. The noble smugly smiled and asked if he said something wrong. Theo shifted his grip on the wine bottle and swiftly shattered that thing on Blondie's head without mercy. Remington and even the psychotic Axion were shocked by this sudden turn of events. Blondie grabbed his head in agony as blood stained his piss-colored hair. Theo stood on top of him, still holding the bloody, broken bottle. The bastard dared to sit up and curse at Theo for humiliating him in front of everyone. Before he could run his mouth with a litany of the usual arrogant noble yapping, Theo sent a kick that broke the bastard's jaw. Theo's straightforward plan had finally started, as his eyes turned cold and crazy. He insisted that he was just giving Blondie a little greeting only to get a hurtful response back. The other nobles stopped in their tracks, scared and confused by what was happening. Meanwhile, Theo's quest progress was starting to go up, reaching 43% now. Remington had spent 2 weeks of training with the young lord, and he knew the guy to not be a hot-headed thug. He considered that Theo might be doing this for his sake. As Blondie continued bleeding on the palace floor, Theo asserted that this was his form of welcome greeting. He stepped over Blondie's arm and situated the noble's limp body on top of a platform, while slowly applying pressure. Since he sent his hellos already, it's time to say goodbyes now. Blondie desperately shouted for him to wait and stop what he was about to do, to no avail. Theo stomped on the bastard's arm and completely shattered Blondie's bones, sending a horrifying cracking sound all over the banquet hall. The nobles who were running their mouths freely just a few minutes ago were stunned and tongue-tied at the ruthless display of punishment. That little breaking bone act raised Theo's quest progress to 58%. Blondie passed out from shock and agony, his drool staining the palace carpets. As Theo discarded the limp body like the trash that it was, he asked the crowd if anybody else wanted to say hello. His intimidating actions pushed the quest progress to 66%. Suddenly, knights that had been hiding from the shadows made their entrance and surrounded Theo from all sides. They drew their blades and focused on neutralizing the threat at hand. 4 blades surrounded Theo, trapping him in place. The knights wanted payback for the sin of hurting their young master. They asserted that the punishment for such vile actions must be death. Theo smiled as his plan just kept on getting better. He asked the knights who's the guy he just trashed. They answered that Blondie was the 3rd young master of the Hanavi clan, young master Ian Hanavi. Theo was amused by their confident answer. The Hanavi clan is one of the 6 snow clans that support Ragnar. He knew that the bodyguard knights of these spoiled nobles would not be able to sit by and watch the whole time. They always look down on the imbecile if he starts acting up. So, Theo asked the knights what the problem would be if he roughed up their young master. With a deep sense of pride imbued in his voice, he asked them if the dogs of one of Ragnar's Bannerman clans dared demand his death. Can they really take responsibility for threatening Kyle Ragnar's bloodline? He's not one to tolerate disrespect after all. The knights felt their grips on their swords loosen upon hearing Theo's threat. Their anger for watching their young master ruined was replaced by the innate fear they had for the Ragnar clan. In addition, the oppressive aura the young man was emitting was suffocating them. This was not the imbecile of Ragnar that they knew and routinely made fun of. Now that they're thinking about it, Theo also has the right of succession to the throne as a direct blood of Ragnar. On top of that, Ragnar is the Lord of the North, the overseer who reigns over the 6 snow clans. To declare death to the blood of the dragon is not something that any sane person should do. It is a sin for which the destruction of an entire insignificant snow clan would not even be considered unreasonable. That protection and prestige haven't been applicable to Theo for such a long time as a useless descendant that most people forget. But that won't do anymore. All 4 knights knew that they had made a colossal blunder, and they needed to apologize. But Theo had already issued the kill order to a mysterious presence lurking nearby. The swift glint of a blade blinded everyone with its speed. The next thing you know, 4 severed heads were already flying in the air, night blood staining the palace floor. Theo was as calm as the eye of a storm as the blood of his enemies swirled around him. The mysterious presence he ordered to slaughter the knights steadily landed on the carpet full of grace. It was none other than his master, Evelyn Nereville herself. With more blood spilling all over the place, the arrogant nobles finally felt the threat looming over their heads. This is not a joke anymore. Theo's quest to escape the imbecile of Ragnar title had reached 70% completion. Axion had no choice but to watch as his banquet turned to Theo's show of force and dominance. Evelyn looked at his disciple and asked when he realized that she was tailing him. Well, it was a given, really. He doesn't exactly know why she followed him all the way to Camellia Palace, but thanks to her, Theo will be able to turn the tables on these morons without worry. As the crowd was stunned into silence, they seemingly waited for Theo's next action. The night before the banquet, Commander Julius paid Evelyn a secret visit. He came to rag on her about not taking in any more disciples, yet diligently training her new student every day. Evelyn must have gotten used to this brute sneaking into her quarters, as she didn't even want to entertain his games. Recently, Julius's only joy in life has been tormenting his former comrade. That includes raiding her expensive wine stash for his own enjoyment. Tonight, Commander Julius really wanted to hear just what Evelyn saw in the kid. She knew that taking the bottle away from the brute's hand was impossible now. Evelyn answered that Theo was simply beyond expectations. Considering his attitude about honing his craft and talent, he's truly among the best ones she has ever taught. Considering that even Axion passed through her hands, that's a bold claim. Evelyn did not mince her words. Considering Theo's potential, she could confidently say that he was beyond that of even young Master Axion. She sincerely insisted that she was not just speaking empty words. Well, Julius always trusted her eyes for talent. She had 2, while he only had 1 after all. Julius reckoned that a person cannot change so drastically overnight, so the most reasonable explanation for Theo's case was that the kid hid his strength all this time for some reason. Admittedly, it was odd to believe that someone would do that for such a long time, only to start suddenly showing it off now. As a trainer, Evelyn believes that being hasty in one's steps makes one bound to trip and fall. But what she saw in Theo was different. It seemed like he was being chased by something intangible, like he was pushing himself out of fear. That's also why she's worried about his attendance at this scaled dragon society. Julius finished the bottle of wine and ascertained that the Axion brat really was worthy of worry. He was also the one who suggested that Evelyn should just follow the kid to be safe. Commander Julius feels like something will happen at the banquet. It might be different from what Evelyn's worried about, but something will definitely happen. Being a Ragnar himself, he knew from first-hand experience that when wolf cubs who are hungry for blood gather, they start to establish a hierarchy. The commander laid out a uniform on the table and urged Evelyn to try to tempt Theo to join his unit once more. Not only the kid, but Julius also wanted Evelyn back in the white armored dragon cavalry. He refused to give up on Evelyn. He doesn't want her to retire just because she can't ride a dragon anymore. She has to come back and take responsibility for what she started. Julius exited Evelyn's quarters, thanking her for the delicious wine. She lost an expensive bottle, but she might have just regained her purpose. Back to the present. Inside the Camellia Palace, Evelyn started piecing the events together. She reckoned that Theo must have noticed her following from behind and orchestrated this situation on purpose. Maybe he joined the Scaled Dragon Society aiming for this scenario in the first place. Her worries didn't need to begin with. She wondered at what point did he notice her presence on the way to the palace. Theo actually sensed his master discreetly tailing him the moment he got in the carriage. With his dragon heart, he can unleash his energy perception of his surroundings, effectively acting as a sixth sense. Anyway, what matters now is that the change has been set for his revenge. Theo turned to Evelyn and explained that most nobles in the banquet hall have shown blatant disrespect to a successor candidate of the Ragnar clan. He asked what the punishment for such a horrid crime is. The guilty nobles almost fainted on the spot. They knew exactly what the punishment was. Evelyn, ever a stickler for the rules, stated that depending on clan laws, immediate execution of the guilty parties is enforceable. Theo smiled and he set it up. Evelyn perfectly finished it off. Acting like a magnanimous man, Theo asserted that the offenders are just children who haven't even been through their awakening ceremony yet. He would be satisfied with just taking one arm from each criminal to consider the sin forgiven. Evelyn acted quickly. She was an unstoppable slicing machine aimed at the bratty, panicking nobles of the Scaled Dragon Society. The second son of the Byron clan tried to move out of the way, only to get his right arm severed. The first son of the Red and White Mercenary Corps screamed in agony as his blood spurted from his stump. The dainty arm of the fourth daughter of the Ceres Merchant Guild was not spared. The third son of the Clark clan tried to run, but outrunning Evelyn was practically impossible. When the first daughter of the Howard clan got turned into a one-armed Stumpy, Theo's quest had reached 79% completion. One of the pathetic nobles crawled towards Axion or Axe for those close to him to beg for help. Axe just repeated his brother's words. He can't intervene as this was just another form of greeting. The crawling noble saw a glint of blade in his periphery, and then his arm was sliced cleanly, his blood almost staining Axion's clothes. As the first son of the Parank family twisted and turned in anguish, Axe looked at his former teacher. Evelyn nonchalantly met his gaze and nodded. Axe never expected to meet his former trainer in the middle of such a grisly sight. Evelyn saluted with her blade. Axiom observed the bloodied banquet hall and ascertained that Evelyn only aimed for the ones who made outright comments about the bloodline. Theo made it so that even as a fellow successor candidate, Axiom would not have the authority to stop the slaughter. It only took Evelyn a few minutes to cut the right arms of 14 people under Theo's orders. As for their status, they can still take their arm to a priest right away and get them reattached. But their lives as swordsmen will be a different matter. Everything went just as planned. Axion was more interested in how Theo got both Remington and Evelyn to his side. Theo Ragnar, the imbecile of the Rose Palace, had evolved into something terrifying. The psycho in Axion rejoiced. He really wanted to crush this brother under his foot. Since he had finished what he set out to do, Theo called Evelyn and Remington to leave the premises. They slowly made their way out of the palace with the frightened stares of the remaining nobles fixed on Theo. The brothers stared at one another's eyes. They didn't need to say a word. But before they departed, Theo grabbed Axion's arm. He gripped tightly, tight enough to wrinkle his brother's suit. After a quick second, Theo let go and waved goodbye, telling Axion that he had a ton of fun in this bloody banquet. The final tutorial quest to escape the imbecile of Ragnar title was finally completed. Axion was fuming. He wanted to make a move right then and there, but he knew it wouldn't be wise. The psycho vented his anger by crashing out of his own home and screaming Theo's name at the top of his lungs. With all the tutorial quests finished, no one would dare to call Theo the imbecile of the family. The tutorial is finished, but his true revenge is only getting started. His reward for literally changing his public perception was an experience elixir, a tonic that instantly raises one's level by 5 if the user is below level 30. News of the bloodshed quickly reached the ears of other palaces. Anyone would be shocked to hear that Axion's prestigious Scaled Dragon Society was torn limb from limb, literally and figuratively. As for Theo, he was on a very celebratory move after flexing on those nobles. His subordinates took him to a pub in celebration of his flashy and gory high society debut. Every one of his followers was there. Even Evelyn stopped by to get some drinks. He wondered how the Scaled Dragon Society was feeling after being done in by a man they loved to call an imbecile. Inside the Camellia Palace, Emil Ragnar is in disbelief after learning that not only did they give the MC justification for his actions, but he also chopped off everyone's arms in front of Axion. Axion answers positively, which makes her feel frustrated since it makes no sense to her, and she remembers warning Axion beforehand not to take things so lightly. She is disappointed to hear that they didn't just try pressuring him into submission, but have given our boy complete authority to go wild. Axion tries to defend himself and tells her that once Theo gets recognition, it will be hard to conquer the Rose Palace, assuring her not to worry. However, she tells him to reflect on his actions and doesn't agree to listen to him any further. She points out his mistakes, which almost caused their great plan to get ruined. Axion decides to listen to her and leaves. Emil wonders who Axion takes after to be so obnoxious. Ed Troyven replies that Axion resembles her when she was young. She's not in the mood to joke around, so he apologizes and assures her that the incident might not be worth worrying about so much. He explains that the Rose Palace has been a part of the clan head's harem, so it's very difficult to get its ownership. Even though it has been outside of the clan leader's interest since it's a place where riffraff gathers, it still has the support of the clan leader himself. He shares his plan that all they needed was justification, and thankfully, since our boy Theo has created chaos at the scale of the Dragon Society meeting, he is slowly becoming the representative of the Rose Palace. By using the incident as justification, they can suppress the MC through legal procedures. Emil is left speechless after hearing this and contemplates that the reason she was afraid of Theo becoming stronger was that she feared his power and influence would expand over time if the clan leader focused more on the Rose Palace. However, by using Theo, who is slowly becoming stronger, she realizes the Camellia Palace can suppress him through legal procedures, and the Rose Palace will have no other choice but to bow down in front of the Troivens. She believes the plan might actually work and asks Ed how long it's going to take to prepare. The guy assures her that all preparations are already finished, and tomorrow morning when she wakes up, she will hear some great news. He comforts her and tells Emil that she can enjoy a bath and sleep well for the night while sharing that he has prepared an aromatic candle for her from the South Akran volcanic region. Emil decides to depend on her elder brother and shows her gratitude. Meanwhile, inside a tavern, Remington expresses how shocked he was and says he didn't know Theo cared so much for him. Our boy doesn't understand what he's saying and finds it funny to see him act drunk after drinking just orange juice. Remington says that despite enduring insults directed at himself, Theo didn't hesitate for even a second and stepped up for his friend as soon as Remington started getting insulted. He feels embarrassed and regrets not doing anything. Remington looks at the MC and feels surprised that Theo has been enduring the times when everyone looked down on him and saw him as an untalented, useless child, but he still ended up not giving up and becoming stronger. Even against opponents whom he doesn't have a slight chance of winning against, he showed strong willpower to win his battle against the Camellia Palace, which no one defies. Remington recognizes that Theo has the courage to wield his sword without any hesitation, and Theo did all that just for him. Theo's friend starts to get teary, and he realizes Remington has greatly misunderstood the situation. The guy gets up and tells our MC that despite the orders of his clan, he wants to follow a different idea and shares that he wishes to follow Theo. The people observing both of them start cheering and call the MC and his friend amazing. Theo tries to clear the misunderstanding, but Evelyn telepathically tells him to just let his friend be. He notices her, and she shares that it's not a bad misunderstanding, and that everyone probably intends to get along with our boy. After hearing this, he starts to smile, but understands that he is nothing special since all of his powers are thanks to the status window. He looks at his own stats and realizes that whatever he has gained is thanks to the status window while recalling that at first, he assumed it was a fragment of his own regrets. However, seeing how detailed this is, he realizes the status window is something else. He gets a vague sense of déjà vu but decides not to care about it since it's helping him improve. After the Scaled Dragon Society incident finished, the MC notices that his level has increased. Whenever a level up occurs, the system gives him points that can be used to raise his stats. Theo understands he can increase his abilities however he wants, and feels scared of the shining future that someone like him, who has so much potential, will bring. Evelyn sees his evil smile and gets concerned. Theo decides to prepare for the counterattack of the Camellia Palace first, and asks Remington if he is willing to help our boy with something. His friend assures him he can ask anything, a bit surprised to be called Remy in such a friendly manner. Theo pulls something out. and while giving it to Remy, he shares that the war for the throne between our boy and Axion is going to begin soon, so he needs help in the preparation for when the time comes. Remy becomes silent, recalling that in his past life, Remington became the clan head of Narcio, and the clan's forces became powerful enough to confront the Ragnars. The MC realizes how valuable this opportunity is for him to pull Remy to his side. He gives Remington a piece of paper, and the guy assures him that since he has already pledged loyalty to our boy, he will do everything in his power to help. Theo shows his gratitude, and suddenly someone barges into the tavern while screaming Theo's name. Everyone becomes surprised as some knights barge in and announce that under the sword of law, Theo is under arrest for assault, threat, and intimidation. Evelyn calls it complete bullshit, but our boy tells her to calm down and moves forward to see the arrest warrant. He notices that it's real and that the ink hasn't even dried, which shows his enemies were in a rush. He decides to go without a fight, and they quickly handcuff our boy. As he is being taken away, he smiles at his friends since he trusts them to handle everything in his absence. Remington and Evelyn are in complete shock. Remy directs his focus towards the paper Theo gave him. The news of Theo getting arrested reaches the Rose Palace, and Theo's mother, Cecilia, becomes stunned to hear that her son is being taken to the tribunal and falls down on her knees in shock. Her servant becomes concerned, but she assures him that she's fine and questions why her son was taken away. He reveals that it's because of the Scaled Dragon Society, and her son is being accused of inciting a rebellion. She becomes surprised and questions if her son will be taken to trial. Her servant believes Theo won't easily get out of such a situation since he destroyed the Scaled Dragon Society. Cecilia was not expecting that her son being invited would lead to such a mess, but believes that her son will definitely be able to get through this, because that's the kind of kid he is. Cecilia wishes he comes back safely. Meanwhile, inside a carriage, as the MC is being taken away to the tribunal, they reach their destination, and he remembers it's been a while since he saw this place. Since Theo completely obliterated the Scaled Dragon Society, he understands that he won't get a simple punishment, and will probably have to face trial because of his actions. He understands that since he's the successor of Ragnar, they will question his qualifications as a successor. The knights order him to get off, and as he walks, he realizes his enemies want to crush him completely, but smiles because everything is going exactly as he planned. The knights announce that the prisoner, Theo, has been escorted, and they get permission to bring him inside. The MC thinks that if he wants to take out what he has prepared so far, he wants to do it on a stage of such magnitude. He stands before some amazing figures and becomes a bit anxious seeing all of them gathered in one room. He sees the demon dragon captain of the white-armored dragon cavalry, Julius Ragnar, and 4 of the 9 dragons who protect Ragnar, Sky Dragon Ed Troyven. The MC admits that he would have been extremely overwhelmed in his previous life, as he notices that the sword dragon lady of the Plum Blossom Palace, Osa Ragnar, and the elder dragon head counselor, Wolfgang Ragnar, are also gathered. Wolfgang sees our boy, and the MC remembers that it has been a while. He was not expecting to see Wolfgang in this place. Our boy understands that Wolfgang values bloodlines, so to him, a half-blooded illegitimate child like our boy must seem completely disgusting, and he notices Wolfgang does not even try to hide it. The man asks our boy if he is aware of the fact that he was summoned to answer for his crimes. He continues to tell our boy that the Byron clan, the Ceres Merchant Guild, the Red and White Mercenary Corps, and even the Hanavi clan are all cutting ties with the main family because of his foolish actions. Wolfgang becomes angry and calls him a bastard, questioning if he can bear the damage he has caused. He makes it clear that our boy is going to be held accountable for dragging Ragnar's honor through the dirt. Theo agrees with him and admits that he was far too careless. Instead, he should have cut off their heads, not just their limbs. Everyone becomes shocked, but the MC continues to tell them that all the other clans are their subjects. He says the Lord has given them land and honor, and the subjects are the ones that need to offer their loyalty and lives to the Ragnar. This is the way of chivalry, and despite knowing this, they defied their lord. The MC shows his frustration and says that if he had known about their insolent behavior, he would have severed their heads instead, and tells Wolfgang they should be punished to restore the principles of chivalry. He says he could not just sit by and watch Ragnar's honor, maintained for over centuries, get trampled on. Everyone becomes speechless while Julius calls our boy impressive and expects he will be given a normal punishment after the justification. Wolfgang thinks that the MC is mocking them with his sophistry, but Osa Ragnar understands his opinion and admits that Theo is correct. Wolfgang is surprised to see her take his side. Osa explains that Ragnar is strong, but it's not truly great, so they still need to listen to the voices of their vassals and knights. Otherwise, their clan will inevitably fall because she thinks that they can't rule the world with power alone. He understands her, and decides to keep that in mind. The MC observes that the first wife of the clan head, who is the best swordsman in the north, is fortunately taking his side and is not hostile toward him. He is surprised by her actions and doesn't understand why she is doing that. Osa hopes our boy understands that the punishment he is going to receive is justified. He asks about the punishment, and Wolfgang tells him he will get 3 months of probation. Theo shares his wish to participate in the ceremony, which angers Wolfgang, as he thinks our boy is talking back, but Osa decides to take his words into consideration and allows our boy to participate in next year's awakening ceremony. Ed believes that it has already been decided that the children Theo injured will be participating next year. But thanks to the demon dragon's interference, our boy got a lighter punishment. Ed is satisfied with the results of his plans and knows that the delay of the awakening ceremony brings dishonor within the Ragnar. And since the MC is the one representing Rose Palace, for him to carry such dishonor will allow the Camellia Palace to forward take the Rose Palace. He starts smiling and believes that as his plan is put into motion, our boy won't be able to do anything about it, and he will have no choice but to accept defeat. Ed knows that if Theo decides to appeal, he will get killed, but Ed believes our boy is not that foolish. The MC announces that he wants to appeal, surprising not only Ed, but everyone else as well. Ed tries to stop himself from smiling as he calls the MC a huge fool, since his arrogance has no limits. Ed looks happy that things are becoming easier for him. Julius questions if our boy is aware of what it means to appeal. He answers positively and understands it's not something that can be resolved with just 3 months of probation, so the demon dragon definitely pulled some strings. But he decides to follow his plan, and tells them that in the strong and proud Ragnar, appealing means war. Theo is not planning on taking even a slap on his wrist, and says that in the end, only the strong speak the truth. He thinks he should be rewarded for his actions, which leaves everyone speechless. Meanwhile, at the hidden northern branch of the Ceres Merchant Guild, as everything is engulfed in flames, Evelyn fights off the last guy left. Remington realizes this is where they were hiding, just as the MC said. At the trial, Ed's eyes light up with joy as he sees the Troyvan Camellia Palace is now finished. As the MC stands before all the important figures, Wolfgang questions if he wants to take an issue that can be easily resolved if he waits 3 months into a war. Wolfgang calls it arrogance and questions if our boy is confident he can face the forces of 15 clans alone. Theo says that this is something he needs to handle. Since, in their case, the difference in power is huge, he thinks appeals through proxy battles are a normal thing. The MC understands that appealing means deciding the winner and the loser through a battle. However, if the war is completely impossible to win because of the sheer difference in power, each force is allowed to send a representative, and the winner gets decided after a 1v1 sword battle. This is how a proxy battle goes, which means our boy will represent himself. While there is a high chance that the representative of the plaintiff is going to be Axion, Julius understands that if this goes on, it is guaranteed that the MC will lose. He questions if Theo has a plan in mind, and thinks that if our boy believes someone will step up to be his representative, he will be disappointed. Theo requests to have a proxy battle in a week, just as the rules say. Ed thinks he can see through our boy's plan and understands that he is planning on having Julius or Evelyn as his representative, but no one is going to agree with him, so he will have to fight personally. Ed decides to send Axion as his representative to make the MC understand his place by finishing him off. Ed decides to announce his representative, but suddenly all of them hear someone and become completely speechless. Someone walks in and praises Theo's clever plans as he observes that our boy has changed a lot since he last saw him. He is the clan head, Kyle Ragnar. As soon as he enters the trial room, everyone bows down to show their respects, and the MC also gets on his knees and greets the incarnation of the great dragon god. Suddenly, the system window opens up, telling him to complete a new quest to take over the Camellia Palace and uncover its hidden secrets. He notices it's his first quest after the tutorial and questions if this is related to the blue light he saw earlier. The MC realizes he completely forgot about it because of what's been happening lately, and remembers that there was something there. He stops contemplating and decides to focus on the present as he faces his father. He needs to take care of the situation first since the king himself appeared, which is an insane variable that can jeopardize his plan. The MC asks the reason his father is here. Kyle tells him to stand up and says he heard about the whole situation and understands that his son is trying to make an appeal through a proxy battle. Theo responds positively, and his father says he recognizes it's going to be difficult for his son to enter the battle himself, and questions who Theo is planning on choosing as his representative for the proxy battle. Our boy realizes his father is trying to test him, and says there is no one who can stand in his place, so he is naturally thinking about stepping up himself and being his own representative for the appeal. His father believes his son will lose, but Theo thinks he shouldn't come to such a conclusion without even letting him try. The MC becomes determined to face his challenges and not bend against anyone willingly. After hearing all of this, the king bursts out in laughter and asks the other members of the trial if they heard what his son is talking about. The king becomes impressed by our boy not lowering himself against anyone, and recognizes that this is the best way to describe the Ragnars. The king praises his son for such an amazing attitude. Our boy feels grateful and starts to smile as everything is going according to his plan. He remembers the proxy battle is just bait, and since he doesn't have to fight, he feels amazing to say such words without holding back. He remembers the work he requested from his friends Remy and Evelyn, and understands that he will get his hands on the proof of Camellia Palace's treasonous conspiracy, which will make his victory absolute without even fighting. The king decides to give his son an opportunity, and as the master of Ragnar, Kyle says he wishes to test a single strike against our boy. Theo becomes shocked as his father tells him to forget about the trial. He says if the MC can endure a single blow, he will clear all the charges without punishment. The king tells Theo to come out, but Ed starts shouting as he tries to object. He thinks that testing a single strike against our boy means the king approves of him, which means that if, by any chance, Theo is able to endure the single strike, he will receive the approval of the clan head himself. Ed is sure the MC won't be able to endure it, but just in case he somehow does, Ed decides to object and tries to stop the MC from looking favorable in the eyes of the king. He questions how the vassals and bannermen dare to comment on the blood of the clan leader's son, and continues to talk about the rules of the proxy battle. But Kyle Ragnar tells him to shut up, and makes it clear that if a vassal dares to speak against the Ragnars, they need to just get rid of him. Ed has no choice but to follow the clan leader, and Kyle asks if Julius has anything to say since he has been giggling for a while. The demon dragon says he is just surprised to see the king show interest after such a long time. Kyle Ragnar gets to the point and asks his son if he is willing to do it. Our boy understands that things have taken a huge turn, and even though he was not expecting this, he smiles and decides to accept the challenge. The MC speaks up and tells the clan leader this is too heavy for him, as it is absurd to compare a single strike from the clan leader himself with a proxy war against vassals and bannermen. The king asks if he is trying to refuse, but our MC answers negatively, and says he only wishes to have a fair transfer since the trial has become stricter. He demands that his compensation should also be increased with a cheeky smile on his face. Kyle Ragnar asks his wish, and the MC turns around to look towards Ed and says he wants something like Camellia Palace. Observing all of this, Ed is left speechless. Ed becomes frustrated, and Wolfgang calls it complete madness to propose such a deal with the clan leader himself. He thinks he needs to put the bastard in place since agreements are based on the understanding that both parties hold equal standing. Wolfgang assumes the MC will fail because of his arrogance, but to his surprise, the clan leader agrees with our boy. Kyle thinks that if the MC aims to become the successor, he needs to be at least this courageous and bold. The clan leader asks if the Sky Dragon has any objections, but the man assures him everything belongs to his lord Kyle, so he can't dare to comment on his decision. The lord is happy to hear this and orders them to quickly prepare a stage, as he wants to test his son himself. Theo becomes a bit hesitant, and after a while, as he confronts his father Kyle Ragnar, the other vassals stand on the sidelines to observe. Ed is in complete frustration since the trap he set to catch our MC has turned into a stage favoring him. Ed assures himself not to be anxious, as he thinks that even if Theo has gotten stronger now, there is no chance he can withstand even a single strike from the clan leader, a feat not even high-ranking swordsmen can easily accomplish. Ed assumes Theo is going to die here, but our boy sees through his plans and is confident he won't die thanks to the tutorial reward he received. The king notices something about his son has changed and questions whether he consumed an elixir without anyone noticing. The king believes even an elixir won't help him change this much but decides not to care since it doesn't matter to him how the MC became so strong. Our boy realizes his father has seen through him easily. Even the 9 dragons haven't noticed he took an elixir. The king asks if he is warmed up. Theo answers positively, and his father cheers that normally he uses his great sword, but since our boy doesn't even know how to use mana yet, his father is trying to go easy on him by using a rusty steel sword instead. The clan leader asks if he has any objections. Theo says he doesn't, and the father becomes serious as he decides to begin the fight. An immense aura starts to spread everywhere as the clan leader moves forward, making our boy anxious. Theo observes the immense pressure his father emits with just his fighting spirit alone. The clan leader praises him, surprised that his son is still standing. Theo remains confident since his strength has almost tripled because of the reward he received after clearing the tutorial known as the Experience Elixir. Using the elixir, he was able to gain 5 levels, and he put all the stats into his strength. With this much strength, he feels true freedom as he leaves the realm of the weak and enters the realm of the extraordinary. The MC is confident he can survive at least a single strike from his father, and as the clan leader throws his attack, everyone becomes speechless while Ed believes the MC will die. Our boy puts all his focus into defending himself and is able to see the attack coming. The huge red beam of light falls to the ground, destroying the whole stage, and after the smoke clears, the clan leader smiles to see that he was able to finally find a decent son, as our MC remains standing, leaving everyone shocked. Theo proves his innocence through his will and determination. After successfully surviving the strike, the trial concludes, and the system shows that the sudden quest, Single Strike from Kyle Ragnar, has been successfully finished. Theo receives an inventory and a mysterious blue key as a reward for his achievements. After some time, our boy wakes up while questioning where he is. His mother, Cecilia, becomes happy to see her son wake up and shares that he fainted while standing. She starts to cry while holding his hand as she expresses her feelings about when she found out the clan leader himself challenged our boy. Cecilia becomes concerned and asks if he has any more injuries, assuring him she will immediately call a physician if he has any fractures or dislocations. Theo tells her he is fine but doesn't recognize where he is. Julius comes in and says that by the orders of the clan leader, the Lady of Camellia Palace, Axion, and the Director of Intelligence have all been vacated. Theo becomes happy as he realizes they are inside the Camellia Palace. The system updates him on the situation and shows that he just needs to uncover the secret now. Inside the Camellia Palace's garden, Imel starts creating a fuss, as she doesn't understand why she is being forced to vacate her own property. The servants try to calm her down and start begging her not to create such a fuss. Meanwhile, observing all of this, Ed gives an order to Axion to kill Theo Ragnar. Axion shares his plan for the awakening ceremony, but Ed tells him to cut off Theo's head to finish him off for good. Axion observes Ed's eyes, which are burning with intense desire for revenge. After everything settles down at the Camellia Palace, our boy understands that despite everything going against his plan, he achieved far better results than what he was expecting. He managed to obtain the Camellia Palace without using his trump card, and on top of that, he has obtained another authority. He uses the inventory skill and pulls out an item from inside it. The MC munches on the apple and wonders how such things are possible but recognizes it's very useful. Theo pulls out the blue key from his inventory, which he obtained recently, and believes that it is definitely related to something important. As he focuses on a door, the keyhole suddenly lights up. Theo decides to unlock the door, and as he opens it, he is surprised to see a deep tunnel. The system tells him he has discovered a dungeon for the first time, and the experience he gains inside the dungeon will double as a reward. Seeing a cave inside the Camellia Palace, he assumes it is another quest of some kind and decides to clear it since he doesn't want to miss out on any experience. Before he enters, he remembers he shouldn't go inside the dungeon and prepares. After a while, he comes back with his inventory filled with weapons and decides to check the dungeon. As he walks forward, he notices a huge wolf staring at him and recognizes that it is big enough to be a demonic beast. The wolf monster pounces on him, but our boy is able to defend himself with a shield. He notices the wolf is very strong but quickly pushes it back, determined not to lose in a battle of strength. As he confronts the wolf, it charges toward him while screaming. He quickly slashes the wolf with his sword but fails to injure it and realizes its hide is too thick and the wolf is fast, meaning he won't be able to win against it with half-hearted attacks. The MC recognizes it's no ordinary wolf and might even be as strong as a demonic beast. He admits it won't be easy to defeat the wolf, and suddenly the monster tries to use its claws as it charges toward him. He wishes he could replicate the ray of light he observed when facing his father's single strike. He calls it amazing and tries to use the pure white arc on the wolf, but fails to copy his father's move, accepting that it's not going to be this easy. A single strike is an easier way to label a strike that brings certain death. He finally understands that the key to mimicking his father's attack is to put all his strength into a single sword strike. He leaves his shield and thinks about improving his sword skills and the secret sword arts that rely on his speed, taught by Evelyn. As he charges toward the wolf and stabs its eye, the monster starts screaming and takes a step back. Our boy realizes his plan is working and attacks the wolf once again, believing he'll win. 2 months later, at the training ground, Eod observes that the number of people is increasing. Sybil agrees with him and thinks they need to change the training grounds. A rumor about the clan leader teaching the young master Theo a single strike has been spreading lately. So many people now want to spar with him. As Sybil is talking about our boy, someone comes from behind and addresses him as a lackey. It is Henry Morris from Plum Blossom Palace. He questions when the incredible young master of theirs is coming, as it has been 2 months already. Morris is disappointed and says he assumed the young master never missed a day of training. He calls the MC a coward and thinks he ran away after a fake story of his spread too far. Sybil becomes angry, but Henry doesn't stop and thinks the whole rumor might be a total lie since there were no witnesses. He assumes our boy exaggerated it. Henry assumes the Scared Dragon Society being destroyed must also be fake news. But Sybil's patience runs out, and he punches Henry with all his might, completely destroying his face. Another guy from the Plum Palace becomes angry and insults Sybil, calling him a dropout, but everyone in the training ground starts glaring at him. Sybil calls him a shit-face while making it clear that no one can compare to their young master. Eod is surprised to see his friend call someone ugly with such a face. Sybil shares that he was already annoyed to see the guys from Plum Palace who kept coming here to cause trouble, and makes it clear he won't let anyone disrespect their young master Theo. Sybil and his comrades pull out their swords and declare war on the guys from Plum Palace. They also become determined to put the dropout losers in their place, but as they are about to fight, someone comes between them and freezes all of their weapons instantly. Everyone is surprised, and Sybil recognizes it is Ray Ragnar from the Four Hounds. Someone also joins in on the fun and starts laughing. It is Hulkus Lanka of the Four Hounds. Sybil is surprised to see two members of the Four Hounds suddenly appear, and Hulkus notices someone is missing. Hulkus asks one of the Plum Palace guys where the Luster Tiger is, which confuses him. Hulkus becomes fired up and questions if everyone is deaf, as he is asking for the master of the training ground. Hulkus announces that he is here to challenge our MC, Theo Ragnar. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, the MC reaches his limits, and his sword shatters as well. The system notifies him that he has leveled up. Suddenly, multiple system windows start to pop up, showing that his stats are increasing, and he has hunted 170 demonic beasts. Our boy sits on the corpses of the monsters he has defeated, and the system shows that only one monster is now left. Theo drinks a healing potion to restore his strength and remembers that he almost died multiple times, but the healing potion always saved him. At first, it was difficult for him to defeat the monsters, but as he leveled up, things became easier. He is still surprised to see how fast time flew by. He has already spent 2 months inside the dungeon. The system shows him that only one demonic beast is left. He realizes that it's definitely a boss monster as he notices some stairs. The MC starts walking forward and enters the 5th floor. He looks at his broken sword and realizes it won't be usable, so he decides to enable his inventory and pull out another one. He finds only one sword and realizes it's his last one. Our boy remembers he received this sword from his mother as a birthday present. The MC recalls his past life. He had a lot of friction with his mother leading up to the awakening ceremony, so he decided to toss the sword away in his room and let it go to waste. He observes the ceremonial sword and realizes it's a good one forged from white snow steel. Theo becomes silent as he remembers his past life. His mother barged into his room wishing him a happy birthday and shared that she was waiting for midnight to shower him with gifts. But he became angry at her and told her he didn't want to waste his time on birthday presents as the ceremony was near. He was expecting better from his mother and made it clear that no good equipment would ever change his bloodline. He remembers asking his mother to leave him alone, but decides he won't repeat any mistakes from his previous life. Our boy finds the boss room, and the system warns him to be cautious as a strong demonic beast is going to appear soon. Inside the boss room, Theo finds a dragon taking a nap. He becomes relieved to see that it's just a lesser drake. Theo starts to question why the final boss of the quest is draconic. The Ragnars are said to be the descendants of dragons. Our boy wonders if it is merely a coincidence but decides to focus on defeating the boss monster as he can't get out of the dungeon without it. The system shows him the quest scenario and the number of monsters remaining. She questions if he can actually win this battle since he is still facing a kind of dragon. The MC starts focusing and decides to use a single flash. He remembers practicing it a lot against the wolves he faced, and even though it might not be on the same level as his father's dragon flash, he charges toward the dragon, believing that if he utilizes his dragon heart to the maximum, he should be able to land a serious hit. He pierces his sword through the monster's eye and successfully wounds it as the monster starts screaming in pain. Suddenly, it attacks our boy with its tail, but he is able to dodge easily and becomes disappointed that his weak attack was not able to pierce through its brain. The drake starts screaming and gets ready to kill our boy, but he is able to see possibilities and confidently charges toward the drake, believing he might be able to win. The MC lands a few hits and decides to distract the monster first with normal attacks so he can look for its weak point. All of a sudden, the lesser drake starts screaming again, and fear begins to dominate the battlefield. Theo's body completely freezes because of fear, and despite being able to see an attack coming his way, he is unable to dodge but blocks it with his sword. He gets thrown away and hits the rock wall, realizing how strong the boss monster is. He admits he can't keep this up for too long and gets up to attack the huge monster coming his way, while hoping he can hit its weak points for a quick win. Our boy already knows a dragon's weak point is its reverse scales and jumps onto the lesser drake's body while dodging all attacks. He is able to pierce the reverse scales with his sword, and blood starts gushing out of the monster. He keeps hitting the spot as it starts screaming in pain. Our boy believes his plan worked, but the lesser drake doesn't fall down and surprises Theo. At the training grounds, Hulkus gets mad at Ray and makes it clear that he wants to fight the young master first. She calls him a loser and tells him to stay out of it. But he starts defending himself and says he lost 3 years ago. He has worked hard to improve his skills every day, so 3 years are more than enough to close the gap. Ray doesn't listen to any of his words and calls him a loser again, which makes Hulkus angrier. He decides to have a duel with her and mentions that the winner will get a chance to fight Theo Ragnar. He hits her with a huge weapon, but she is easily able to stop his attack without being phased. Sybil and Henry don't understand what's happening, but become scared seeing the Four Hounds members fight. As they both move forward to attack, Remington appears between them and tells them to go elsewhere since this is the domain of the young Master Theo. He makes it clear that he won't allow anyone to cause trouble for the Master. Hulkus becomes happy to see Remington and shares his desire to fight him as well, but Remington asks Hulkus to understand his words. Suddenly, all of them start to feel an immense pressure, and Remington questions the source of this menacing killing intent. All of them look back to see the MC enter the training grounds. Remington is surprised to feel such overwhelming pressure and starts to wonder what happened during Theo's seclusion training. Ray and Hulkus become excited to see that the young master Theo has finally arrived. Our MC dominates the whole training ground with the skill Lesser Drake's Fear. Earlier inside the dungeon, after the MC pierced through its reverse scales, the Lesser Drake finally died, and the system congratulated our boy on hunting it. As soon as he touched its reverse scales, the monster started going crazy. Our boy thought he would die, but the monster wore itself out after a few minutes since the scales were definitely its weak point. The system notified him that he had obtained the Lesser Drake's Tooth and Claw. The tooth was an enhancement material for weapons, while the claw could be used to increase a weapon's sharpness. He decided to use his rewards to fix the sword he had since he didn't want to lose a gift his mother gave him. The MC also received a skill called Lesser Drake's Fear, which surprised him. He read the stats and realized the skill could inflict fear on a target weaker than him. He was shocked to receive such a skill, as he believed only a few chosen ones could use it. He's happy to see he is getting a chance to try it, and while putting all his stuff back in inventory, he questions whether the skill will be useful for him in Ragnar, since the place is already swarming with powerful people. The Camellia Palace dungeon gets cleared, and our boy finally gets out after finishing the quest of uncovering the palace's secrets. For successfully clearing Scenario Quest 1, he receives a nest compass as his reward. He doesn't understand what it is, and questions whether it's going to be useful in the next quest. Theo puts it in his inventory and decides to go rest in his room first since he's completely exhausted. But suddenly, a maid rushes towards our boy and informs him that he needs to take care of an urgent matter. She notices the wounds on his body, but he brushes it off and asks about the issue. The maid informs him that there's a brawl happening in Training Ground 4. Our boy enters the training ground after hearing this, dominating everyone with his new skill, Lesser Drake's Fear. He angrily tells everyone to get lost since he needs rest. The immense aura knocks people unconscious, but Hulkus becomes excited to see such overwhelming killing intent and charges toward our boy without a second thought, to see who is stronger. Hulkus attacks with his sword, but the MC easily overpowers him with just one swing, leaving everyone shocked. Hulkus gets knocked back and cannot believe his strike was deflected so easily. The MC is surprised by his progress after dungeon training, but Hulkus doesn't back down. He has always been considered the weakest member of the Four Hounds of the North because he is very dumb, and never rounds out his arsenal either. Hulkus attacks Theo again, challenging him to block it. Despite being the weakest, Hulkus has never once been outmatched in terms of raw strength, but now the MC is surprised to see that he is able to keep up with Hulkus, and with a single slash, he counters Hulkus and defeats him. He feels amazing after leveling up so much, and Hulkus starts coughing up blood, loses consciousness, and falls down. Theo realizes he was too careless and should have held back, but feels glad he was facing Hulkus, who is known for his toughness and can tank such attacks. The MC notices Hulkus only fainted. Sybil becomes surprised, and everyone in the training ground starts cheering for the young master who easily defeated the Black Bear, one of the Four Hounds, with a single strike. Theo assures them Hulkus is still alive. Suddenly, his sword breaks as well, which disappoints our boy since it was a gift from his mother. Everyone keeps cheering for the MC, and they all praise him for breaking his sword with a single strike. He doesn't understand why they are so happy. Meanwhile, observing all of this, Ray remembers one of her past memories. When she was a little kid one day, the MC found her and questioned why she was walking around in such cold weather while wearing barely anything. Theo gave Ray his own scarf and thought she still looked really cold, so he decided to take her to his house and told her he would take her home once the snow finally stopped. After recalling all of this, she starts smiling and leaves the battleground. Remington is surprised to see her smile. After a while at the Camellia Palace, our boy looks embarrassed as the maids congratulate him on getting a new title, Luster Tiger. One of the maids is happy to see his hard work finally paying off and advises him to keep it up and maintain the momentum until the awakening ceremony. She believes he can do it, and suddenly, his mother appears and starts feeding him the new abalone dish forcefully. He tries to stop her, but she starts stuffing his face with more food as he begs her to stop. While eating, he remembers his past life and starts to feel grateful. He tells his mother the food is very delicious, and she notices the broken sword. She becomes shocked, and the MC starts sweating anxiously. He tells her it broke during his training and starts apologizing since it is a precious gift she gave him on his birthday. Theo's mother becomes angry at the person who swore it wouldn't break, as it was made with white snow steel and ebony steel wood. He asks if she is talking about the steel wood from the southern jungle. She answers positively and tells him it is a rare and precious material, but feels disappointed to see it was all a lie. She thinks that if the guy was telling the truth, the sword wouldn't break so easily. The MC realizes how precious the materials are, and becomes surprised since he was not expecting it to be so valuable. He wonders how his mother found such a sword. She decides to go ask the maker for some explanation, and force him to make a better sword this time that is perfect for her precious son. He assures her it's fine and that he can just use another sword, but she rejects the idea and tells him people are finally coming to see his true powers, so he needs to be even more careful than before. Since the awakening ceremony is really close, she says she won't allow him to attend the ceremony while carrying a shabby old sword. Theo is happy to see his mother care so much about him, and Cecilia decides they should get going since they are done talking. The MC is confused. She reveals that they are going to the best workshop in all of Winterra, known as the Basque Workshop. Basque Workshop is one of the top 3 manufacturing workshops of Winterra, and its fame comes from the sheer size that rivals a factory. However, the most notable thing about the workshop is its master. She is a person who falls into the category of special rank by the intelligence agency, and a blacksmith with the title of Master Craftsman, which only 2 other Ragnar artisans hold. The MC is surprised to see the elf of capitalism incarnate, the demon craftsman Kurson. He never expected to meet such a tycoon and questions how his mother has connections with the demon craftsman. Cecilia angrily questions why her mother is still smoking. Hearing her call Kurson her mother, our boy becomes speechless. Kurson tells Cecilia not to address her as mother since their relationship is not that of a parent and child. On the day Cecilia decided to run away, Theo was told his mother is an orphan with no family in the world, but is surprised to see she is the daughter of the high elf Kurson. He realizes that the reason he looks so handsome is that he is also a quarter elf. Kurson asks why Cecilia unexpectedly decided to visit her. Theo's mom throws back the sword and tells her it is a defective product. Kurson doesn't believe her and becomes mad hearing her daughter call it a defective sword, even though she forged it herself. Kurson pulls out the sword and realizes it's broken. Cecilia questions if that's not a defective product, and Kurson becomes speechless. The high elf asks who the wielder is. Cecilia tells her Theo is the wielder of the sword. Kurson asks if it's the kid behind her, and she tells her mother to watch her mouth because the MC is a genius who will one day reign over Ragnar from here on. Theo introduces himself to the high elf and expresses his gratitude for being able to see the renowned master of Basque Workshop. Kurson remembers him and praises Cecilia for raising such a child. Kurson asks if he is the only one who used the sword, and the MC answers positively. Cecilia thinks the sword is defective, but Kurson becomes surprised and realizes it's going to be a long conversation, so she invites them inside. As they all walk in, the MC asks if his mother is related to the demon craftsman. She says he is right, and he becomes curious if Kurson is her real mother. Cecilia tells him he wouldn't know since she didn't speak much about it, but even though it was for a short period, Kurson took her in as a foster mother. Cecilia shares that her mother loves anything she finds beautiful, whether it is music, jewels, theater, or even people. She says that is the reason Kurson took her in as a foster child. Kurson tells them to stop talking about the past, calling it pointless. Cecilia thinks she is lying, and her son asks how she ended up getting out of this place. Kurson reveals that Cecilia left because of her desire to marry the Ragnar clan's leader. Kurson never expected her daughter to willingly go to such a miserable place, and is surprised she has survived for so long. Cecilia says she couldn't resist the manliness and handsomeness of the clan leader, who loved her dearly. Kurson is disappointed that despite running away from home, she came back last year and started begging Kurson to forge a sword to gift Theo. Kurson calls her shameless, but Cecilia becomes annoyed to hear her say such things in front of her son. They both start arguing, and the MC smiles, as he has never seen his mother talk like this. He remembers that in his past life, he never tried to learn anything about his mother, and was an extremely ungrateful son. He questions if he was just too obsessed with the clan, and notices that Kurson cares a lot about his mother as well. He wonders why she didn't do anything in his past life. They finally reach their destination, and Kirsten shares that this is the room she lives in. Cecilia asks why her mother brought them so far inside, and demands her to make the best sword for Theo to make up for it. Kirsten suddenly tells Cecilia to wait outside as she grabs Theo and quickly closes the door, leaving Cecilia outside. Inside her room, Kirsten completely ignores Cecilia calling her and decides to get straight to the point. She asks if the MC has the relic of the primordial dragon. Our boy becomes confused and questions if she is talking about the ancestor of the guardian dragon that protects the clan. He shares that he has heard about the legend that treasure has been distributed across Winterra for the descendants of the Ragnar clan. She makes it clear that it's not a legend and questions if he really doesn't have any relic. Kirsten starts to tear up and becomes frustrated, wondering how he was able to destroy her sword, even though she poured her heart and soul into forging it. She doesn't believe the sword can break against anything other than a relic and questions if our boy has any idea how precious the sword was. He tries to apologize and remembers that the sword got damaged while he was fighting a lesser drake. He doesn't understand anything about relics, but she gives up and decides to show him instead so he can understand faster. She shows him a casket that's completely sealed with chains and asks if he notices something. The MC starts to see the blue glow and questions if it is a quest after recognizing it as the same glow he saw from the door of the dungeon in the palace. Kirsten shares that she doesn't see anything but believes he was able to notice something judging from his actions. She starts dragging the casket and tells him she has tried many times to open the sealed casket and obtain the item inside, but she always fails. She puts down the shield casket and mentions the primordial dragon's relic. Kirsten shares a story of the primordial dragon that removed one of its fangs and forged a blade from it, known as the monster sword, White Moonlight Blade. She tells him that if he tries to break the seal on the casket and is successful, she will hand him the sword known as the White Moonlight Blade. The MC looks a bit confused, and she reveals that if he fails to open it, he might lose his life in the process. She questions if he still wants to try it, and the MC starts smiling out of excitement. He makes it clear that the sword is now his. The system shows that the next scenario for the quest is to be chosen by the primordial dragon's relic, the White Moonlight Blade. The White Moonlight Blade is a sword of the leader of Black Snow, who is one of the 9 dragons known as the Black Dragon. Very few people know about the sword because everyone who has ever seen or talked about it has either died or gone missing. Our boy remembers a mysterious man who noticed him and was surprised he was visible to Theo. The MC ended up seeing the true form of the sword through sheer coincidence and doesn't understand why the Black Dragon let him live. He is surprised to find out that the Black Dragon's White Moonlight sword is here, and it is an actual relic of the primordial dragon. He remembers running into the Black Dragon 4 years ago and realizes Kirsten was in possession of the sword during that time. She asks if he wants to open it, and the MC starts smiling, becoming determined to obtain the sword no matter what. He tells her it's his sword now, and while observing the casket, he realizes it's very similar to the Camellia Palace. He tries to use the blue key to open the casket. Kirsten is confused as our boy unlocks the gasket, and a weird light starts to shine. Suddenly, Kirsten becomes concerned as our boy starts getting pulled inside by a mysterious black fog. The MC tries to free himself but fails and gets dragged into a mysterious place. He opens his eyes and doesn't understand where he is. Theo recognizes the Rose Palace while everything is engulfed in fire. He doesn't understand why he is seeing all of this again, and while watching his past memories, he realizes he completely forgot how weak he used to be. Because of this, he needs more power, enough to defeat Randone and crush the Camellia Palace. A griffin starts messing with his brain and grabs our boy, ready to eat him whole, but the MC wakes up and grabs its beak, catching it off guard. He becomes aware that the monster is trying to take over his mind by using his desire for power against him. The MC realizes this is why it is called a monster sword. The mysterious griffin calls him insolent and tries to free itself, but the boy confidently tells it he has already conquered all the despair it's trying to show him a long time ago. He questions if the monster was hoping he would be tempted by its useless powers, even though he has already seen many quests. The griffin becomes confused, and our MC notices it looks very different from the griffin in his memory. The monster tries to free itself, but our boy doesn't let go and remembers it was at least 10 meters tall, but right now they are both of similar heights. He questions if the griffin became smaller because it was seen for a long time. He decides not to care about it, and makes it clear that the Moonlight Sword is now his as he tries to punch the griffin with an evil look. The monster tries to talk it out with him. Meanwhile, inside Kirsten's room, Cecilia starts screaming after seeing her son knocked unconscious. She tries to wake him up, but nothing works, and Cecilia starts crying as she questions her mother why her son is unconscious like this. Kirsten becomes speechless as Cecilia cries and says she never asked her mother to do this. She just wanted a sword for her son. Kirsten observes that there is a monster's energy linked with Theo's bloodstream, which is something she has never seen or heard about before. She was hoping he would be okay since he already possessed a relic. Cecilia tells her mother that if anything bad happens to her son, she will never forgive Curson for her actions. All of a sudden, the MC grabs the moonlight sword, and a mysterious light starts to form around his chest. Cecilia becomes concerned and tries to wake him up. Theo finally opens his eyes. She hugs her son tightly as she starts to cry. She tells her son she was very worried, but he assures her not to overthink it as he is completely okay. The system congratulates him on hunting a griffin and finishing the quest. As a reward, he becomes the owner of the white moonlight sword. The MC understands that he survived because of his luck. The griffin was easily defeatable because it was just freshly unsealed, and any psychological attacks were of no effect on him. The system notifies him that he has observed the monster energy of the white moonlight sword, so now his magic power has greatly increased. His magic power surpasses 200, and his body starts glowing. Our boy learns that his magic power has started to gain divinity, and has increased to the level of a high-ranking swordsman. He feels disappointed to know he can't use the magic power right away, as he needs to hold himself back until the awakening ceremony. Curson expresses how surprised she was and congratulates him on succeeding. He questions if she is going to keep her promise, and she assures him that elves do not lie. He notices the sword is being rebellious and questions if the sword still hasn't acknowledged him as its master. He becomes a bit anxious, but the elf assures him the sword is acting this way after being trapped for 400 years. She says since the sword is finally out in the world, it wants to release all the pent-up frustration. Curson suggests he can try taking a swing at the wall with all he has. He questions if it will be okay, but she starts mocking him and thinks he is worrying for no reason because, even if it is the legendary sword, a swing from a brat like him who is inexperienced and hasn't even had his awakening ceremony can't damage the Basque workshop. He becomes unnerved to hear this and decides to give it a try. Our boy understands that he can hide his dragon heart whenever he wants, so this is a nice opportunity for him to test out the new legendary sword he just received. He walks toward the wall and tries using all of his magic power. The MC excuses himself and removes the cover of the legendary moonlight sword as he gets ready to take a swing. Curson observes him and becomes concerned. She tries to stop our boy, but he ends up using an attack known as Single Flash, completely destroying the workshop's wall. Cecilia becomes astonished while Curson's eyes fill with anxious tears at the sight of the destruction. Contrary to what Curson thought, my guy literally split the building wall in half with just one swing of his sword, and he was not even aiming to destroy the wall. Curson couldn't help but sink into despair at yet another costly loss from our boy, especially after the sword he had just broken. Even Theo thinks this is seriously overkill, and he's already running on empty because that sword drained all his magic to pull off that devastating slash. Right at that moment, Curson starts giving him some mana, and she dashed towards him so quickly that he didn't even notice when she reached him. She's startled to see he really has no control over his magic at all. Whatever the case, after looking at this massive crack in the 10-foot thick wall, she's sure this lad is an absolute genius. She starts to feel kind of proud to have a grandson like him, and I can see those dollar signs in her eyes, which clearly show that her greedy mind is cooking up something juicy to profit off our boy. She puts her hand on him and tells him she'll be his patron from now on, and all he has to do is spread his wings and show the world his skills. Well, there you go. She's literally using him as a walking, talking billboard for her workshop, and Theo can clearly see the glint in her eyes. He bluntly tells her he can see those dollar signs shining right back at him. As the night deepens, Theo and his mother prepare to leave Basque's workshop. After exchanging their last goodbyes, they part ways. We see the fangs she's holding, and it turns out Theo gave them to her as wall repair funds. She's thrilled to have this loot from a Drake, and is sure he must have snagged it while obtaining the relic. She's also feeling proud of her daughter, thinking about how she raised such an incredible son. Right at that moment, someone drops by and greets her with her title of Demon Craftsman. Curson freezes for a moment at the sound of this familiar voice. She turns around and asks why he's here, but this mysterious crow of Rober Ragnar just simmers with a red glint in his eyes and doesn't say a word, leaving us hanging in suspense. 5 days pass, and the day of the awakening ceremony has finally arrived. As usual, Evelyn and Theo are in the middle of a sparring session. After exchanging blows with him, she can tell that his swordplay has gotten stronger and faster overall. My guy just flashes a grin, saying he's really glad to hear this because he never thought someone like Evelyn would ever praise him. The onlookers, as usual, are sweating their balls because they feel like weak sauce compared to Theo. You see, it's been half a year since Theo began to change, and Evelyn is amazed that he's already grown strong enough to push her back. If he awakens his magic today, it'll be the birth of a monster. After they spar for a while, the lady gives him props, saying he's done a great job and that he might even aim to become the valedictorian of the awakening ceremony, and her prayers are with him. Theo flashes a big smirk back at her, thanking her for her kind words. He says that if he becomes valedictorian, he'll mention her name during his speech in front of everyone. Of course, Evelyn gives him this worn-out look, wondering if that's even necessary, while his fellows come over, excitedly telling him to mention their names too. Theo couldn't help but feel a bit proud, thinking that being popular is such a drag, while Evelyn just gave him this creeped-out look, clearly thinking how he is getting way too full of himself. The scene then transitions to the central headquarters, where Theo makes his grand entrance, introducing himself to the guards as Theo Ragnar of Camellia Palace. Once inside, he notices the large crowd in attendance, as the awakening ceremony is the most important annual event for the Ragnar clan. Every participant is hoping to get good results, and as swordsmen of Ragnar, this is their first chance to be acknowledged and honored. With everyone from the Ragnar clan watching, including the clan head, Kyle Ragnar, the pressure is high. Even some big shots are present, like the 9 dragons and the former clan head from 2 generations ago, Hilda Ragnar. The more Theo looks at Hilda, the less she seems like someone who's 150 years old. Either way, he is relieved to see her attending again. The conductor then bangs a drum to grab everyone's attention. This guy is Vana Ragnar, the judge of the ceremony, and a Dragon Gate swordsman. He snaps everyone to attention and tells them it's time to begin the preliminary examination. The prelim involves grabbing a sword placed on the ground and leaving a mark on the steel wall on the platform. He reveals that the wall is forged with a mix of white snow steel, so ordinary steel blades won't even scratch it, but that changes if they channel their magic power into their attacks. To help with that, he decides to hand out Soma to everyone. This single Soma pill will provide the power of 10 years' worth of magic, an elixir designed to help open their mana halls. He tells them to swallow the Soma and focus on opening their mana hall in the Dantian, and only then will they be able to cut through the white snow steel wall with their swords. The depth of their cut will determine their results. Vahana screams out that from now on, the participants whose names he calls will have to step forward, grab a Soma, and get on the platform. The first participant is Theo Ragnar, and they tell him to come forth. Of course, my guy steps forward promptly, and as he's taking that pill, he reflects on how, in his past life, Axion was the valedictorian. He then grabs a sword and walks toward the white wall, determined that this time won't be like the past. As he does, a system window pops up with Scenario Quest 3, become the valedictorian of the awakening ceremony to clear the quest. We then cut to the 150-year-old Hilda asking Kyle if this boy is the one he mentioned before. Kyle responds positively and asks if he has caught her attention too. Hilda replies that she's definitely curious after hearing so much about this boy and wants to see for herself just how competent his descendant really is. My guy stretches his shoulder muscles, while he can't help but to feel nervous. The judge, Vana, promptly appears and reminds him to swallow the Soma. Theo promptly pops the pill into his mouth, reflecting on how in his past life he had swallowed the Soma but was unable to control the mana, seriously injuring his Dantian. But this time, something like that won't happen. As soon as he swallows the pill, he feels a surge of power, and the mana begins to scatter around the area. Vana finds himself bewildered to see this brat causing a mana wave of this size. He's worried Theo might not be able to properly control it. You see, when someone swallows Soma, they need to handle it with care. In order for the mana hall to settle in the Dantian, the more talented Ragnars, who have loads of mana, need to be extra cautious. If not, they can end up disabled, and Vana is certain this brat is done for. But, as surprising as it is, my guy quickly stabilizes. Theo couldn't help but feel a rush of happiness, realizing he has both a dragon heart and a mana hall. It's almost a bit disheartening how easy it feels this time, unlike in his past life. But anyway, from now on, he's officially allowed to use mana, and he won't have to hold back the vast amount stored in his dragon heart. He prepares himself, leaps into the air, and just unleashes everything. A dragon manifests from his mana, soaring straight toward the wall. In a single flash, it hits the wall, creating a giant crack. Vana is left absolutely boggled, and he announces without a doubt that Theo Ragnar has passed. The spectators are equally bamboozled by such a display of power. A system window promptly pops up before Theo, announcing that the curse of bad luck that's been in effect has ended, and his fame is beginning to spread throughout the world. A genuine joy spreads across our boy's face because he's finally reached the same starting point as the others. The system further reveals that many people have taken an interest in his impressive performance. Osa Ragnar Plunus wishes to take him in as a disciple, while Julius Ragnar is discontent with the amount of attention focused on him. Meanwhile, Rober Ragnar remains cautious about him. And lastly, Hilda Ragnar shows interest as well. My guy is thrilled that not only the Black Dragon and the Sword Dragon are paying attention to him, but the fact that he's also caught Hilda's eye makes him especially happy. After all, she has the heart of Garuda. He thinks to himself how amazing it would be if he could just obtain that. The other contestants also try their luck with the white wall. One of them manages to leave only a tiny scratch, as thin as a hair. He cries out to see that he has a long way to go to even come closer to Master Theo. Ray Ragnar gives it a shot, and so does Hulkus Lanka and Remington Nacrio. They all do their best, but none come anywhere close to the massive cut my guy left in the wall. This poor guy is absolutely devastated that all 4 Hounds of the North had monstrous results, yet not a single one of them made a mark as great as the young Master Theo. It's finally Axion Ragnar's turn, and as he walks forward, people start murmuring among themselves. Some say that at this rate it's a contest between the Luster Tiger and the Dark Tiger, while others doubt even Axion can match that level. The fact that people are talking about Theo like this only angers Axion beyond belief. He strides toward the wall with his sword in hand, and once he swallows the Soma pill, he's fired up. The mana crackles around him, and out pops a giant red dragon that slashes directly at the wall. The sheer power of it leaves Vana utterly speechless because this is the first time he's been surprised so many times in one day. The crack in the wall is massive, and Vana promptly announces that Axion Ragnar has passed as well. The crowd goes absolutely bonkers because Axion's slash has left a crack just as big as Theo's. Now everyone is on edge, knowing that the precision grading will be the deciding factor in who comes out on top. As dusk begins to settle in, Vana announces that with this, the first stage of the awakening ceremony is officially over. This year, he's particularly satisfied to see so many people significantly increase their scores. He says that those who passed should prepare for the second stage of the awakening ceremony in 4 days. Finally, the rankings that everyone has been waiting for will be announced, including the valedictorian for the first stage of the awakening ceremony. Everyone in the arena held their breaths in anticipation as the valedictorian for the first stage of the awakening ceremony was announced. The clear front-runners, Axion and Theo, were locked in as they both hoped to hear their names called. In the end, Theo Ragnar manages to clutch the win for himself. While he is stunned, the arena erupts in booming cheers. Vana Ragnar is pleased to announce that his performance earned him a perfect 10 out of 10 from the judges. Whether it's technique, magic power, control, or speed, every aspect was flawless. While his followers were cheering, most of the candidates found it hard to believe that the Flash Tiger had taken first place instead of Axion. As it turns out, the depth of his sword mark came close to the record held by young Master Thorkel. That little tidbit made the crowd go even wilder. Thorkel Ragnar is an enigma. He is one of the 5 major candidates of Ragnar, and he is speculated to be the closest in the line of succession. The Salutatorian award fell on Axion Ragnar, and his displeasure is apparent. He also got a perfect 10 out of 10 score. However, he has been relegated to second place as his sword mark was a bit shorter than that of Theo's. That fact made his blood boil even more. Remington Narcio snagged 3rd place, Ray Ragnar in 4th place, and Hulkus Lanka in 5th. The Hounds of the North had the top places on lock. Meanwhile, the idiot of the Southern Inspection Post and Theo's first follower, Sybil Drea, eked out the last slot at 87th place. The second stage of the awakening ceremony will start in 4 days at the treacherous Winter Mountains. All 87 examinees who have passed are advised to prepare as best as they can. With that, they are dismissed, and the first day of the ceremony concludes in an unexpected direction. That night, Theo's faction immediately went straight to the tavern for a celebration. The place rumbled with cheers for the first and second placers. Everyone felt vindicated as the true might of Training Ground Number 4 was made known to the world. Praise and applause for their very own Sir Theo and Sir Remington started flowing along with liquor. Theo thanked his men for the support, but he knew better than anyone else that the trials were not over yet. His goal is for every one of them to pass the second stage together. He pulled his buddy Remington closer and confidently announced to everyone that they would be aiming to be the final valedictorian and salutatorian of the batch. Evelyn is also in a festive mood, and she genuinely believes that the two can pull it off somehow. Remington personally congratulated the young master for such a splendid display of power earlier. Seeing Theo's hard work bear fruit filled everyone with pride, but at the same time, Remington cannot help but feel ashamed of himself for falling so far behind his friend. Theo smiled at Remy, assuring him that he just got a little lucky this time. Also, ranks and such things should not matter between friends, right? Hearing that cleared Remington's mind of useless anxieties. They made a toast with their orange juice glasses and promised to try their best in the upcoming second stage. Sometime later, Theo found himself roaming the nearby snowy mountains. Finally, away from the crowd, he processed what it really meant to snag first place in the awakening ceremony. It is an achievement that he would not even dare dream of in his past life. Though it might not have been a real fight, he defeated Axion fair and square. He can hardly believe how far he has gone in such a short time. Clenching his fists in anticipation, Theo proclaimed that this was only the beginning of his story. Defeating and decapitating that traitorous fraud, Randone is far from enough. That guy is just a lackey to the actual players. Theo's true enemies are the psychotic Axion and the tricky Sky Dragon backing him up. Theo is willing to use everything at his disposal to get his ultimate revenge down the line. For now, He has another matter of great importance to take care of concerning the nest compass he got as a reward. The mysterious artifact is actually pointing toward the Winter Mountains, the venue of the next trial. In the second stage, he will have the chance to find out what the compass is steering him into. While he was lost in his own thoughts, he sensed something fishy nearby. His instincts immediately kicked in, ready to defend himself from whatever was hiding nearby. Someone has been tailing him, and Theo hates surveillance. The hooded spy watched in surprise as his target vanished out of thin air, only to feel the cold glint of a blade aimed at his neck from behind. Theo demanded to know who the spy was, and the dude tried his best to convince Theo that he was not Seuss. He introduced himself as Gatsby Yotan of the renowned Gale Sword Platoon. Gatsby insisted that his captain sent him after witnessing such a splendid performance at the first test of the awakening ceremony. Theo had an unreadable poker face as he stared into the man's soul. It seems like the scouting offers are arriving sooner than he expected. Gatsby elaborated that their captain is offering Theo an opportunity to take an admittance qualification test. This offer flabbergasted him. He is offended that the Gale Sword Platoon wanted him to take some useless test rather than a full-on invitation. Gatsby bragged about the illustrious reputation of his platoon, asserting that even a chance to take the test is hard to come by. Before the dude could spout any more bullshit, a fiery voice cut him off, calling the Gale Platoon a bunch of morons. A woman carrying a great sword on her back addressed Theo as a young master and offered a far better deal than the morons of Gale Sword Platoon. This feisty girl is Ayan Sosoli, also known as the Fire Goblin and Vice Commander of the Black Iron Cavalry. She personally came to extend a direct invitation for Theo to join their ranks. Gatsby stumbled on his words as soon as he saw who had just come through. Those that recognize the Fire Goblin's name know not to piss her off. But before Ayan can get close to Theo, multiple scouts from different factions come out of hiding in fear that such a promising candidate might get signed before they can extend their offer. They all ran in, shouting their ridiculous proposals. The Black Sword Platoon is willing to promote him to squad leader within 3 years. The Swords of Law and the Security Bureau also threw their eager hats in the ring. Annoyed at the bidding war unfolding, the Fire Goblin snapped in anger. The scouts were supposed to entice the young master with promises of assisting and advancing his career, only to fight and bicker amongst themselves. Theo just watched from the sidelines as the idiots cursed and jabbed at one another. He figured that he should just quietly slip away before they pester him even more. But his exit plan might have to wait. Pink plum petals slowly filled the area, dancing in the air. A sultry voice silenced everyone with sheer aura. Even though she knows she will be criticized for being too greedy, the newcomer just can't help herself. Slightly sullying her sterling reputation is nothing if it means gaining an exceptionally talented individual to her side. Lady of the Plum Blossom Palace, the sword dragon herself, Osa Ragnar Plunus, has joined the scouting war, shocking everyone into silence. Ayan was the only one who dared to question what business the clan head's first wife had in this place. Lady Osa confessed that she came with the same intention as everyone else. She has come all the way out here just to see Theo Ragnar personally. While Theo is dealing with the ridiculous situation he was put in, the salutatorian is relieving some stress by beheading some people. Calling Axion Ragnar a sore loser is an understatement. This dude is wantonly killing his men to get his frustrations out lest he explodes. He weaved, maneuvered, and slashed his way through a number of young swordsmen, treating them like training dummies as he snuffed their lives out one by one. Axion Ragnar is hungry for blood, and blood he shall get. With every dash and slash, he remembers Theo's smug face after leaving a bloody, armless mess back in the Scaled Dragon Society banquet. The image of Theo unleashing so much draconic aura when he took the first slash in the trial has been etched deep into Axion's disturbed mind. Losing by a few inches made the defeat even more infuriating. The only thing running in his mind is the thought of killing and gutting Theo Ragnar. For now, killing his own men will do. By the end of his rampage, he had completely abandoned his blade in favor of using a much more hands-on and brutal approach to venting his anger. By the time he calmed down, the training ground was already filled with lifeless young swordsmen who thought they were just getting a spar with their young master. When another person stepped into the arena, Axion's eyes darted around. Without even looking at who just arrived, he picked his sword back up and motioned to attack. He threw the whole blade with pinpoint accuracy, aiming for the intruder's head. But for someone like the Sky Dragon, stopping such an elementary outburst is simple. He just grabbed the sword's tip out of the air. Ed Troyven cursed his nephew out for being so pathetic when releasing his rage on random people won't change a thing. When Axion got a good look at his uncle, he calmed down a little. The Sky Dragon advised that at times like this, Axion needs to cool his head and come up with a proper plan. Ed Troyven had already put some things in motion, and Axiom only needed to follow. The nefarious uncle and nephew duo are hell-bent on turning the second stage of the awakening ceremony into Theo Ragnar's funeral. Back in the snowy woods, the scouts made way for Lady Plumblossom out of fear and respect. They knew that whatever they tried to offer Theo would be insignificant if she was in the competition. Just as they were about to appeal how unfair that would be, the space between Theo and Lady Osa was severed from the outside world, locking them in her personal domain. Ayan reckoned that setting up an isolation zone could only mean one thing. She might be planning to personally share her teachings with the young Ragnar inside the swirling lump of energy. The inside of the isolation zone was a lot bigger than what it looked like outside, as the space stretched as far as they could see. Theo recognizes this as one of Lady Plumbossom's signature moves. She can freely create a perfectly isolated space severed from the outside. He used to hear stories about the technique, and now he's experiencing it. His popularity is catching up with him. Lady Plumblossom laughed at his reaction. She's certain that Demon Dragon will be furious once he finds out what she's trying to do, but no one can stop her from giving Theo a gift if she wants to. By gift, it can only mean one thing. She slowly unsheathed her blade as she described how intense the clan head's swordsmanship was. It is akin to dragonfire descending from the heavens and destroying everything and incinerating everything in its path. Lady Plumblossom's style cannot be more different than that, for she prefers to embrace countless variations in her sword. Theo looked around to see that the snowy trail he had walked on a minute ago had turned into a tranquil field of vibrant plum trees. Her steps are rhythmic, sending ripples on the surface of the still water floor with each stride. This is the form of the dragon that she pursues, one that contains constant and infinite changes. As the sword dragon began slowly moving forward, she started swinging her sword, making the plum blossom bloom as countless petals gently drifted down. Her blade softly traced through the petals as they danced alongside her blade. She executed a peculiar flow of movement that seemed impossible. She slashed, stabbed, and chopped with a strange tempo. By the end of her demonstration, she slowly lowered her sword, making the petals spiral alongside the blade, beautifully falling on the ground. It was absolute cinema, a feast for Theo's eyes. The ridiculous thing was the entire sequence was performed within just a single breath. What she just showed is the celestial flower rain, the first full bloom technique of the plum blossoms. Opening her eyes, the First Lady's deep gaze turned towards Theo. The young man was speechless as he felt his heart pound loudly. He just witnessed something truly awe-inspiring. Within a single continuous movement, he counted 120 circles and variations. It gave credence to the claims that, in terms of pure swordsmanship, she is above even the clan head. If Theo could absorb and apply even a little bit of what he had just seen into his single flash, his power would undoubtedly skyrocket. He humbly asked her if he's really deserving of such a gift. She laughed lightly and assured him that it was fine as long as he enjoyed watching it. Finally, Lady Plumblossom dissolved the isolation zone. The tranquil field of plum trees vanished, and the snowy woods returned. She asserted that if Theo ever wishes to see what comes after the first technique, he can come to find her whenever after the awakening ceremony. Such a blatant offer shocked the scouts. The First Lady simply wishes for Theo to become a new wind in this desolate place. With that, her body turned into a pile of beautiful plum petals drifting away. Theo knows more than anyone that he just received something far too great. It would be hard even for him to act shamelessly and not show any gratitude to the First Lady. Now he's in a complicated position. He reckoned that it would be way too greedy to become Lady Plumbossom's disciple and join the white-armored dragon cavalry at the same time. 3 days later, the second phase of the trial has finally kicked off into full gear. The 87 eligible candidates have gathered at the Winter Mountains near the northern Great Wall. Such a treacherous venue is perfect for the challenge ahead. Winter Mountains stretch across a ridiculously vast distance, from their home of winter all the way to the Demon Sea. In this place, the Ragnars have shielded humanity with all their might. They have been at war with the cursed land beyond the Great Wall for over a millennium now. They have been culling the Demon Sea, a place where countless demonic fiends lay waste. High-rank swordsman and second-stage exam overseer Jackie Ragnar cautioned everyone that the new generation would inherit that duty one day. This makes Winter Mountain the perfect testing ground. However, as apprentice swordsmen, the examinees are not allowed to cross over to the Demon Sea, and the exam area is restricted to the inner side of the Great Wall. Today, the exam is very simple. They will have 15 days to defeat demonic monsters that roam the Winter Mountains and retrieve the bells that have been placed on their necks. There are 7 different colored bells out there: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, the colors of the rainbow. Each bell increases in point value in the same order. Naturally, higher points mean confronting a more powerful demonic fiend. Overseer Jackie emphasized the danger of violet bell fiends. Those abominations are at a level that no apprentice swordsman can touch, let alone defeat. Yet they are worth a ton of points. The hunting method will be left entirely up to the examinees. Whatever method they choose to use doesn't matter. All they have to do is bring back the bells to be tallied before the exam ends. Everyone picked up on what the overseer implied. Since they can use whatever method they want, snatching someone else's prey or bells is allowed. No, it is encouraged. They are purposely sowing seeds of discord amongst everyone. But that's just another reflection of Ragnar clan's law of the jungle approach to things. As a final note, the overseer taught them about the totems that repel fiends installed across the mountains. Inside these safe zones, supplies have been buried nearby, and everyone's encouraged to utilize them effectively. Finally, Overseer Jackie formally signaled the commencement of the second trial. As soon as he dismissed everyone, several candidates rushed off and scattered without hesitation. Most of them had the same idea as Sybil. Since the exam will stretch for 15 days, supplies are essential. First, they must secure those resources, and then go with their own strategies. It had only started, but Hulkus Lanka loved every second of this test. He is in his element. Axion, motivated by revenge, has come into this exam with a malicious goal in mind. His Sky Dragon uncle heavily emphasized that he must move precisely according to plan. All he has to do is play his role, and Theo will fall. As Axion single-mindedly pushed forward at breakneck speeds, he failed to notice someone tailing him from behind. It was none other than the ever-so-mysterious Ray Ragnar. Seeing as everyone was already rolling out, Theo walked towards the woods to get started too. But before he could get far, a familiar voice called to him. Remy ran to his side and asked if Theo remembered how he said they were friends. The Silver Lion has thought long and hard for the past 3 days leading up to the trial, and it seems that he considers Theo both a friend and a rival. With that realization, a desire has taken root inside him. The desire to truly surpass young Master Theo in power. The young dragon was shocked at first, but he eventually grinned with delight. He knows what Remy is feeling all too well. The moment they first crossed swords in that training ground, a mutual respect for one another blossomed. Theo felt the same way as the Silver Lion. He considered him a dear friend and rival too. Remy heartily laughed in relief as he had been stressing if the feeling was one-sided. With renewed clarity, Remy proclaimed that he would try to beat Theo during the second stage. Theo genuinely wished him good luck with that goal. Without wasting another precious second, Remy exploded in speed and headed deep into the Winter Mountain. Theo took a second to soak the feeling in. Someone incredible like Remington has set him as a goal, someone to surpass. It made him feel a thrill he never felt before. He's finally becoming someone that's truly strong, and it is delightful. Opening his inventory, Theo set the mushy feelings aside for after the trial. He retrieves the nest compass and officially starts the search for the dragon's nest. The compass needle pointed him in a general direction, enough to get started. On the side of one of the deadly cliff faces, the familiar blue light of the system shined through a hidden cavern. The nest compass led Theo to the treacherous outskirts of the Winter Mountain. Upon arriving at his supposed destination, he was confused and saw absolutely nothing that stood out. The compass has turned its needle to the ground, so that must mean something, right? Maybe he needs to start digging until he hits the jackpot. If that was the case, he really should have brought a shovel, as using the white moonlight blade to dig in the snowy soil would have been a gross misuse of a legendary blade. As he was considering what to do, Theo's spidey senses started tingling once more. He steadily took his sword out of the scabbard and turned around on a dime, his eyes fixated on the unwelcomed presence. Sometimes, if the wind is not doing its job, then you have to take to the oars. He sent a sweeping attack, the force of the slash mowing everything on its way down. The trees were cleared in a single file and the ground was wrecked. Spilling some killing intent to the presence tailing him secretly, he gravely urged them to come out. Some unsavory characters started coming out of the woods, confused as to how Theo noticed their well-concealed presence. As soon as Theo saw the man's face, he was taken aback. It wasn't just one man, there were 3. In Theo's previous life, he knew these monsters as the 3 scoundrels of Vuk Mountain, Hyde, Cow, and Rune. These aptly named scoundrels are the scum of the earth. They were widely known as the ones who slaughtered civilians under the guise of accidents during missions. They are the cancer that cropped up as a side effect of Ragnar's rule of the strong. Theo especially cannot ever forget the massacre they committed in Vuk village. While he was working in Black Snow, he was assigned to personally pick up after the bastards. He knows the horror that these 3 will inflict upon the world better than anyone else. In public records, the death toll of the single incident was reported at 761, with another 220 people missing. The shocking part was that none of the corpses could be identified at all. It was because their killing method involved absolutely decimating the heads of their targets for fun. He already considered that their terrible nature would get in the way down the line, so he's planning to deal with them at some point. But he never expected to meet them this early. Since they were expertly tailing him, Theo asked if Axion sent them for a hit or something. One of the scoundrels just laughed at his assumption. He cleared up that they cannot be ordered around by kids. Naturally, they were employed by someone so high up that Theo would never even imagine who was behind the hit. But the young dragon quickly narrowed down the culprit to one person for certain. The head counselor. The reaction of the scoundrels gave it away. Theo correctly guessed who the employer was in one try. It wasn't too hard to guess, given how much they were talking about blood and heritage. An exam proctor is nowhere to be found nearby, so they must have been included in the conspiracy too. Theo's sharpness was a big problem, but the scoundrels were confident that they would get this job in the bag no matter what. The leader of the scoundrels asserted that he feels the best when he crushes a good-looking face like Theo's. Bro is just glazing at this point. The Flash Tiger remained unfazed as he refused to let the three out of his sight. He did not even let the mouthy scoundrel continue with the childish trash talk. Theo immediately slashed away, summoning an avatar of an ancient dragon with his force. They hadn't even gotten the chance to close the distance yet, and the scoundrels were already at death's door. Theo chopped his sword thrice in quick succession with perfect precision and executed his newly formulated technique, Triple Dragon's Claw, each one targeting a scoundrel. The young master never shies away from violence, but he does not want to become like these pieces of trash. So they do it as revenge for a crime that they won't commit until a few years down the line. He will do the opposite of what the scumbags did. Only their heads will remain. The destructive power of the dragon's claw was so potent that it could decimate a human body into a pulp while leaving the head intact. He simply flexed on these criminals, giving them the comeuppance they deserved. Theo was actually surprised at how fast these troublemakers fell by his blade. Maybe that's because they were still young at this point in time. He owed this new skill to the celestial flower rain that Lady Plumblossom imparted upon him briefly. He dissected and reconstructed the style for the past 3 days and came out finding a way to use 3 single flashes in a row. Using circles and arcs to draw curved lines of slashes was hard. A whole new world of different transformations and applications has opened. Of course, completing those transformations 120 times in a row like the First Lady is still out of reach. Theo quickly grabbed the severed heads with the scoundrels' pained and surprised expressions have been preserved. He simply threw the evidence down the cliff for beasts to feast on while he went back to thinking about how to get underground. Much to his surprise, he heard a dull thud as soon as the heads reached a couple meters down. Upon further inspection, he ascertained that there was an invisible staircase winding down the cliff. It's now stained with scoundrel blood. The hidden quest to find the unseen stairs and explore the blue cave has officially started. Theo excitedly jumped down from the cliff to head for his treasure. Unbeknownst to him, a strange bird has been keeping an eye from afar. Back in the palace, the officials posted that they were receiving the test's initial results for the first few hours. Currently, Axion Ragnar holds the first position with 41 demon bells collected as he tears through the exam with 20 of his men. Second place is Ray Ragnar. But everyone has been wondering about one thing. How is Theo Ragnar faring? The messenger had to scroll all the way down to the last page of his report for Theo's recorded progress. Currently, the young man has collected 0 demon bells, and he is off on his own without a team. It's safe to assume that he is moving quietly or lying in ambush somewhere. Those assumptions can easily be verified if there are proctors to confirm. Everyone at the table heard Lady Plumblossom's impatience. The head counselor argued that there are no rules that exceptional performance in the first stage would lead to the same caliber in the second. He even proposed that the kid's heart might not be prepared for real battles, especially considering that he is a so-called natural child and not a pure Ragnar. The head counselor assumed that his goons must have taken care of business quickly, doing their job better than expected. Suddenly, the old councilman received a telephonic transmission from Ed Troyven, asking him if he did anything behind the scenes. The head counselor did not even bother to deny the allegation. He's bummed that he couldn't tell everyone else beforehand, but it looks like things have worked out, so that's good. Even the Sky Dragon was shocked at the geezer's brazen attitude towards an impure child of the throne. It pissed Ed off that some crazy elitist old coot acted without permission or consultation, potentially stifling his plans. After Camellia had been taken from his family, the Sky Dragon campaigned for an opportunity to take over the Rose Palace. However, he could not find the primordial dragon's relic anywhere. Ed Troyven has come to a hypothesis stating that Theo must hold a clue about Rose Palace's relic. Sky Dragon can feel it in his bones. That boy, Theo, has some clues about the relic on him. Grown and shown that he is a threat. Using telepathy again, Ed jacked into a guard's mind with a message to hurry Axion up. Lady Plumblossom can see that the head counselor and the Central Intelligence Director are scheming something, and they're not as sneaky as they think. The pro-Theo group might have to set up some precautions and countermeasures too. It was a reasonable idea, but Julius Ragnar heavily opposed such a thing. The Demon Dragon genuinely believes that Theo is not someone who would crumble on a mere challenge. Julius trusts his gut that Theo is safe and just stuck in his own unknown circumstance. Also, Julius has not gotten over the fact that Lady Plumblossom sneakily met with Theo. The First Lady feigned ignorance and playfully laughed. Back in the Winter Mountain, Theo finally managed to see where the stairs were leading. Inside was a relatively simple cave structure, but there were a lot of pesky skeletons hanging around on the outskirts. They constantly attack with a pretty strong mental attack trap set up inside. Most people will have a breakdown if they happen to get caught in it. However, such low-level mental attacks are nothing after he passed White Moonlight Blade's tough test. More importantly, Theo managed to follow the compass needle and find something. To check on the situation, Theo expanded his senses outwards, making the wildlife scurry for their lives. For times like this, the special divinity skill is just too juicy. He can even see what's lurking behind every corner. Casting those thoughts aside, Theo was the first to arrive and be tested. Finally, he found the hatchling's lair. 3 years from now, things might be a lot different. Black Snow will end up killing the hatchling and discovering a priceless legendary item. Walking deeper into the cavern, Theo quietly apologized for the future of Black Snow as he planned to take one of their historic records. Behind the gate is the Amon Grimoire, a one-of-a-kind game-changer. As soon as Theo entered the gate, he was frozen in place, overwhelmed at the sight before him. There were literal mountains of gold and legendary weapons, gems and trinkets scattered everywhere. One thing is for sure, this place is not a hatchling's nest at all. In the middle of the gigantic room was a sleeping draconic beast and an ancient dragon, using its sea of gold coins as the most expensive bed in the world. Looking a bit closer, he saw that it seemed to be in a deep sleep, uncaring of the outside world. Theo wasn't delusional. He knew that if this thing woke up and attacked, he could forget about the relic and all the riches in this place, and he would surely die. Could the reports from Black Snow be false? Why is there a full-grown dragon in the chamber instead of just a hatchling? Maybe he's a victim of misinformation, or maybe he just came 3 years too early. Either way, he needs to think of his next move in this unexpected situation. He seriously considered just leaving without touching anything. It's unfortunate, but he can always just come back before the Black Snow can get here again a few years later. But that choice left his hands as soon as the dragon opened its eyes. When he turned around, Theo was locked into a staring contest with one of the most archaic beings in the world. Much to his surprise, ancient dragon Roadbroke spoke in human tongue, calling him the first selector that had come in a long time. The giant beast was actually kind of chill. It even introduced itself without a hint of hostility. Roadbroke explained that the Ragnar calls her the guardian dragon and the owner of Winter Mountain. Everyone who grew up around the clan knew the name Roadbroke. Trying not to be rude and disrespectful, Theo crashed down to his knees and paid respect to his ancestor. Roadbroke was quite interested in the fact that the young human called her an ancestor. As far as Theo was taught his whole life, the guardian dragon Roadbroke is the companion of the Ragnar clan's progenitor, Sigurd, and the mother of Friedreif. The beast asserted that Friedreif the bastard must have been spreading nonsense out there. While it's true that she and Sigurd were old companions for a time, she viewed it just as a sign of respect for the contractor who sold his soul to dragons. There wasn't much emotional exchange between them. It is impossible for humans to mate with dragons in the first place. Maybe the humans in this world are not real monster bangers. This led Theo to ask if his family's line really has the blood of the dragon, or if it is just one big propaganda to lift the Ragnar name up. Roadbroke cleared up that the claim was not wrong at all. Through the long-term contract between her and Sigurd, her dragon's blood is shared. Just as Theo was about to ask more questions about his family's history, Roadbroke cut him off as she was done with the pleasantries. She will now begin her duties as a guardian dragon to the selectors. From this point forward, Roadbroke is going to keep the covenant made at the beginning of the clan, and will allow the selector who passes her test to ask 3 questions. He can finally breathe in relief and thank the gods, as this seems like a non-battle situation. Since his goal is to eventually stand at the peak of the clan, deepening his knowledge of the family's lore is crucial. Through these 3 questions, he needs to get as much information as possible. Outside, the second phase of the awakening ceremony is still in full swing. Axion continued dominating the leaderboard and the beasts in the surrounding area. His 1,000 Dragons roar is already powerful enough to one-shot most enemies. As a white tiger beast fell to the snowy ground, bloodied and lifeless, Axion walked closer. He was heading for the green bell dangling on the poor cat's neck. With another bell secured, that makes 57 confirmed kills. He's quickly racking points up. Nevertheless, killing these monsters was secondary. Axion was just itching to find Theo, but his scouts kept on telling him the same report that Theo was nowhere to be seen over and over. One of Axion's lackeys, Orion Gardner, smugly remarked that Theo must be scared now that he has to risk his life and face real monsters. Orion was determined to attach himself to Axion's entourage the whole way through, no matter what. He fears and believes in the maniac's strength. But he might have run his mouth a little too far when he admitted that Theo got stronger, but lived as an idiot for far too long. The next thing you know, Orion's tearing up and gasping for oxygen as Axion's hand slowly crushes his windpipe in a chokehold. Axion reckoned that this pissant of a follower must not know a simple fact because he had never been strong. In the clan, having power means having no need to fear anything. The Dark Leopard is on the brink of mentally breaking at this point, and he's still as cruel and paranoid as ever. Orion tried to eke out an apology between his desperate gasps for air. This little outburst would have continued if not for another messenger coming in with a message from the director of the Central Intelligence Bureau, Ed Troyven. The message was simply a reminder to hurry up and carry the plan out. Axion threw the pissant away like garbage and asked the messenger to send a reply to his uncle to stop pestering him. He doesn't need to be reminded of the goal because no one in this world wants to kill that punk, Theo, more than this psychotic half-brother of his. Meanwhile, Theo is just chilling down in the dragon's den, still trying to think of a fitting question that would give him as much information as possible. After a while, he finally came up with his first question. Roadbroke yawned. She was just glad that the young man finally made up his mind as the boredom nearly knocked her back into a deep sleep. So, the first question was why the guardian dragon is still here. He kept it short and sweet. Roadbroke instantly clocked his strategy of asking basic questions to figure out some hidden background knowledge and praised the kid. The reason why she's still hanging around is quite simple. There exists a monster situated at the very edge of the world. Its body is spread across the seas. They call this entity the Nameless Monarch. For the past 1,000 years or so, Roadbroke has been lying in wait and staying in her lair because she was tasked with the mission to protect the world. The Winter Mountain and this dragon's den are just an outpost. Theo fell silent, digesting the bombshell that his ancestor had just revealed. He was certain that he did not feel it wrongly. For a brief moment, he felt what seemed like fear in Roadbroke's eyes. Who would have thought that an almost godlike figure who's as powerful as an ancient dragon is still capable of feeling terror? There is an existence out there that brings fear to a deity who has reigned for over 1,000 years. The Nameless Monarch must be one freaky bastard. Theo desperately wants to ask more questions and dig deeper into the lore, but there are more important things he has to find out first. So, for the second question, he asked what exactly these ancient dragon's relics he kept on hearing about. Roadbroke answered that there are about 3 relics out in the world. Though she doesn't know much about them, she can sense that the young selector has been quite lucky. The 3 that Roadbroke knows of are the dungeon in Camellia Palace and the White Moonlight Blade. As for the last one, it's a bit more complicated. Roadbroke called it the ancient dragon Papnir's relic. It is a result of a great ancient dragon's soul fragmenting into 31 different pieces. These pieces were then bestowed upon humans in hopes of protecting humanity and resisting the Nameless Monarch. The form of these ancient dragon relics is not limited. Some could be an item, some could take the form of an experience, and a rare few even turned into intangible yet strange phenomena. Hearing that last part made the gears in Theo's head turn. He can finally see that he always had the last relic in him. Everything he experienced after regressing in time flashed before his eyes. Going through 20 years of life and being brought back in time to the brink of death is the strangest phenomenon one can ever go through. His regression must have been just another form of the ancient dragon's relic, which means Theo himself contains the relic. He must have been given a fragment of Papnir's soul. But something's not adding up. There's always a dragon protecting the relics, but there was no such thing in his regression. Realizing something, Theo came up with the third and final question. He looked at Roadbroke right into her piercing eyes and asked why he was chosen. Why would the hand of fate choose someone as talentless as Ragnar's imbecile to fight something as powerful as the Nameless Monarch? Roadbroke stared back fiercely and decided to answer his final question with a question of her own. She asked why Theo would think that he was the only one chosen out there. The simple reply made Theo realize that he had not been looking at the bigger picture. He might not be the only one chosen by these powerful relics. Sky Dragon Ed Troyven, Demon Craftsman Curson, and even the Black Dragon all knew about the existence of relics. They even actively go out of their way to find and collect said relics. Chances are, they were also chosen by some form of Papnir's soul fragment. If that's the case, are they also seeing the same messages he has been seeing? Did they also regress back in time? While these series of questions led Theo one step closer to uncovering the world's truth, it also made things a lot more complicated. To summarize, there is a nameless monarch lurking at the fringes of the planet that even the ancient dragon fears. And it is entirely possible that there are more regressors apart from Theo. Now that Roadbroke has answered his 3 questions, the quest is complete, and Theo will be given his reward. The young man was so engrossed in all the implications of what he just found out that he almost forgot that he came to obtain Amon's grimoire. But now that his horizons have expanded, he had changed his mind. He needs something bigger, a lot bigger. He wanted something that cannot be compared to any item in this treasure trove. As a reward for the quest, he is given the chance to pick and take anything from the ancient dragon's treasures. Roadbroke proudly boasted about the variety and sheer quantity of her treasures collected from all around the world. There were gems, relics, elixirs, skill books, armaments, anything you could think of. She had them in stock. Whatever Theo chooses will be a priceless fortune worth beyond his wildest imagination. Roadbroke urged him to pick wisely, and she said she would deliver. Theo's lips slowly twisted into a sly smile. When prompted by the ancient dragon to state his desire, Theo Ragnar proudly proclaimed that he wanted to have Roadbroke herself. That answer was definitely out of her expectations.